Shalom, everyone. Greetings and welcome. Welcome to our Annual Life Global Ministries Fellowship. Can you all hear me? Let me know if you're in the chat, if you can hear us. We are absolutely live. I am Akoti Maria, and I am alongside.
Shalom, Safta Ahava here. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hmm. Thank you. Greetings, Chief. Thank you very much for being in space. Shabbat Shalom to you. It
Peace, peace.
is yes, peace, peace, peace. All right, so we are jumping right in. This is our part two of Earthly Wardrobe this evening. And, we've had a lot of conversation around wardrobe, actually. Greetings again, Chief. We've had a lot of conversation around wardrobe. So we're going to jump in and dig right in. We know the sisters will join in the conversation and the build and the dialogue this evening and, add to it. So, we look forward to that addition. We also look forward to, live questions. This could literally be a little bit of a Q&A happening. And I want to say the scope of what we cover is only a small portion of how much we could actually speak on coverings, like head coverings and adornment, and even clothing, as we covered the last time we were with you in part one. So before we open, of course, we are going to say that we want to greet you all. We greet you all in the name of Yahweh. We greet you all in the name of our Elohim. And as we do this, we want to open up the space. We want to open up the space for, receiving. We want to open up the space for learning and for edification. And we're here this evening as women to, share and teach the other women in the space. And we will that you align with the word sung and you align with the knowledge and wisdom that's shared this evening. And we will that everything that's shared and the words that proceeds from our mouth are in alignment with the will of Yah. So let's jump in.
Yes. And it's such an important thing when we talk about our coverings because it is so important that we know as women, you know, what what's sacred to us and what helps us to stay in line with the Most High Yah's will. And there's so much I've even learned about why I wear a covering. And I'll have to admit, coming into a new, it was what we were expected to do. So I did it without any real depth or understanding why. But now it's an honor for me. And it's just become a part of who I am. Because when you have an understanding about what you do, then it means a lot more. So yeah, let's get going.
You mentioned something about the covering and just how valuable it is. And so one of the things we want to even start with, we're talking about physical head covering. However, it's important to think about the way the man covers us. And so if we're pulling from the fact that women are not designed, we're not designed to walk in the world uncovered. So if we're not designed to walk in the world uncovered, and we do need a man, right? We have to walk, we're meant to walk through the world with the covering of a man. And if not, we become very masculine, right? We behave in a very manly way. If we're not covered, then these are the things, are the implications in terms of like how we move and how we'll be also received in the world, right? So we want you, as we're talking about the head coverings, we want you to think about the effect, the symbolism as well, right? We want you to, and we're going to get into the symbolism when we talk a little bit more about, spiritual wardrobe or heavenly wardrobe. But we do think it's important to consider that if our physical heads are covered, that is directly connected to the fact that we should be mated women, right? And Just to touch on that, in the Anuwe glossary, which you can find on the Anuwe website, we outline covered or uncovered to be led as defined by the glossary, to be led, governed, and given authority by the Most High. And the Most High Yah covers men. Men cover women, and women cover children and junior women, and people are covered or uncovered rather when they move away from the structure that's mirrored by the Elohim. And that structure that's mirrored by the Elohim is that there's hierarchy, right?
Right. That's right. And you said something that made me think about the layers that we there are that covers us, and what a protection those layers present for us, especially as women. And women have been covering their hair from ancient times. And back in ancient times, there were different religions and things and reasons that the women covered their hair. We here at Anu, a matter of fact, in the Anu Way, it speaks very, very, very clearly about why we cover our head. And it says the wardrobe provides a barrier between your evolving truth, consciousness, spirit, alertness, and body realization. And that's part of the New Way, which, of course, you can find that online as well. It also says that it is only the master of her homestead who should have access to the earthly crown of the new woman, and a new woman who are brides should always have her crown covered when in public. Her hair should not be beheld by others, in particular men outside her homestead. And again, it takes me back to how sacred it is that we always, even though a lot of times you'll hear him say, we're only when you're mated. Well, as a new women, we're always covered, even before we're actually mated. I'm covered, and I'm not mated at this time, but I am covered by my son until that time comes again. And even as a widow, because I'm still young enough not to be a widow, but I mean, not to consider myself unable to be mated. So, but there's always a covering. There's those layers that we always, and I, for one, can really appreciate not walking through this on this journey uncovered as a woman, because it frees me up to do other feminine things, that keep me from being, walking in masculinity. It keeps me in obedient to what my purpose is. So again, you have to really embrace and understand you're not just covering up your hair, you're not just wearing a head decoration, but there is a very sacred and important reason, um, that we do wear our coverings. Um, Hi, everybody in the chat. Shalom, shalom, shalom. So I see that everyone's already starting to greet us. And I don't know if we mentioned, but shalom, peace to Marjorie, Marie, a new radio, South Danaya, Master Menelek, Akoti Yafe, Ra, is it Ra Haynes, Master Menelek, and let's see, Abba Harut. So, in Chief, yeah, let them know something. Yeah, I'm out there. But, there's special ones that we new women, we keep ourselves in that protection so that we can operate as we're supposed to.
Yeah, and you know, yeah, there's just, when we think about, there's a part in the Anui that in underneath presentation and attire that actually speaks to the way we present ourselves. I think that piece that you pulled actually comes from that section too. And there's a part that kind of speaks to the way we present ourselves and how important it is, and the fact that it's a reflection. It's a reflection of who we are. I mean, yes, it's culture, but it reflects how we think. It reflects that the idea that, yeah, we're covered, right? So even if we're not under the covering of our fathers as women, and then we are under the covering of a righteous man, right? And we're not moving and moving out in the world, just moving. And like I want to bring forward this clip. I think Chief, not I think Chief posted a clip that is directly connected to the fact that women should not be out in the world, and it's actually looks at a young woman who's being interviewed and asked about, like, what is your situation, pretty much. And she was saying, yeah, well, she was a construction worker when she met this man, and he wanted to get married, and she, of course, did not want that. And I'm saying that is a prime example of what happens, and how our lives become topsy turvy, turned inside out, when we are not aligning with a man. When we think, okay, the way we live, or the way the secular society orchestrates the functionality and the roles that we have, that's acceptable, and it's not. But we're not digressing. This is an important part, because it helps to build a context, right? As to why, right?
That's right.
I- it makes me think of knowledge of self.
That's
I'll
right.
pause. Knowledge of self is the very first layer of clothing. So if I know myself, then the way I adorn myself, the things that I wear, is really critical. And we see everybody else copying. We see everybody else wearing the things we wear. A matter of fact, I grew up in the Caribbean, and we'll share a little bit later on when we talk about adornment. I have a story about something that I observed as a child growing up, and it was done to me, and I see it happening with other children, and I never understood the connection. But now I understand the connection. It's rooted in Hebrew culture. And so you talk about all the women who wear head coverings from different cultures, and there being the various reasons, right? I think it's important to note that when we start looking at where some of those head coverings come from, it's rooted in Hebrew culture.
That reminds me, head coverings, they are a symbol of respect in some cultures. For example, in African cultures, women wear head wraps as a sign of respect for elders. And some people believe that women's hair is sacred, which is what I spoke on earlier, because it is a symbol of our femininity and our beauty. And in some cultures, long hair is seen as a sign of good health and fertility. And again, that is something only the master of your homestead should behold, because it is sacred and he is your direct covering. And there is a reason why, and that constantly reminds me why we're not to walk alone as single women. When
Right.
you were talking about the story that Chief spoke on with the young woman being interviewed, um, I have to be really, really honest in saying, coming up, going into the military, and having the type of job positions that were more masculine, it really does take away from your femininity. You can't be both. You can't be masculine and feminine. I mean, there's something out of balance in all that, you know, and it just brings it back home, And Paul spoke about it, even in the Torah, the instructions of Yah, um, by teaching the Gentile women to cover their heads. And Paul said in his defense to Governor Felix, Peter even defended Paul by giving Paul's words the weight of the scriptures. And he said, imitate me, just as I imitate Yeshua. Now I praise you, brethren, that you remember me in all things and keep the traditions just as I delivered them to you. But I want you to know that the head of every man is Yah. The head of woman is man. And the head of Messiah is Yah. Every man praying or prophesying having his head covered is a dishonor to his head. But every woman who prays or prophesies with her head uncovered dishonors her head, for that is the one and same as her head was shaven. So walking around with your head uncovered is like walking around bald. And we know that also is a fashion in this Western culture. But again, what is it? I mean, everybody's doing any and everything these days. But we know as a people, with a culture, within a community, that there are rules and regulations, there's laws and precepts and statutes that we walk by, and there's a reason for that. And it's so simple when I think about it. Just like there's laws when you drive, because if there wasn't, can you imagine the chaos and the road? I mean, it would be crazy. Nobody could get anywhere without hurting or an accident or something. And it's the same way when we live lawlessly. So, and it is part of the law that we cover our head. And again, different cultures do it for different reasons, but we in the new, we do it because it is our heads are sacred. Our hair is only to behold by some within our community, within our homestead. I remember it was something that I learned when I first came into a new, and I never forgot it as I was growing to learn about why we wear our head covered. And I remember saying that, this is our dome, even as women. And what goes on up here should not be exposed to any and every body and everything. And it's again, our heads are sacred, and it houses our what, our mind, our brain, and the things that feed us. And this is where we receive our light in through. So why would we have that exposed? It's like, reminds me of a baby with a soft spot. You don't go around touching that soft spot on that baby's head. So again, it's so many things that um, makes it more than important, but more sacred about head coverings. And yeah, it is a sign that you're walking around loose in the world.
Because it indicates you spoke about submission earlier. A head covering is an example of and a symbol is symbolic representation of submission. It means that you have someone who is mastering you or is a master over you. And again, if I think it's really important, because coming into a new, I understood that, but didn't understand it before. Like, if you are not mated, you're not married, or you're not under the covering of your father, you're out in the world. You're like a vessel exposed. You're like a well that's just open and laid to waste, because then, as you said, anything can have access to it. Anything can defile that well. And so the same is true for a head covering. Covering our heads means that, and the sacredness of hair too. I think Chief covers some of this in um, the segment on counting the Omer, if I'm not mistaken. So when you think about, the fact that hair can pick up on frequency, right? And it's almost like, you know, feelers. It's pulling and drawing so much from the world. So if and when we do go out into the world, we have to think about all of the things that we're exposed to. Apart from people gazing on our heads, it just, what are we pulling in unknowingly?
And there was something that I've noticed, because I do notice it, because I've lived for such a long time walking out around without a head covering. And I see women again with decorative head coverings, and they might have on their hair covered or tied up. I call it, tied up, and matching their clothes. And then they have on maybe some tight jeans, or you know, the rest of their dress just doesn't go. It doesn't speak of anything special other than it's for decoration. But I do notice that the way it's like an unseen protection, because wherever I go, even when I'm not with my covering, um, There's a certain level of respect. But it's not just because my head's covered. It's like you mentioned, it's the whole way you carry yourself. You know what I'm saying? It's the whole package. It's not just, something here, something there. It's a whole package of, how you carry yourself, because people see you coming before you actually get in your space. And there's an aura, as you mentioned, that that surrounds you. And I just noticed that I've gotten to a point before I go out, I just make sure my mind is in the right place, because I'm not just walking out any kind of way anymore. Usually, I mean, I remember having to run to the store, and I just throw something on and jump in the car and run and get what I got, not even what caring about how I would have presented myself. But because now I'm cautious, I'm very aware of what and who I represent. So anytime I leave to go out of the house, there's a certain, even in the New Way, it speaks about presentation, you know, and it talks again, it covers the whole package. So I'm just curious for those of you in the chat, what is it that what is it that you notice most about the way you're received, by others outside the community, and is it, maybe it's because of the way you carry yourself, maybe it's because of the way you dress. And for the sisters, are you just wearing your head covered, or are you walking as though you're a covered woman? So
And
jump right in.
to speak to that, so as we were doing research for this, I found I see a hand in the background, so I'm gonna add them to the stream. I'm gonna add you to the stream. I'm sorry, I just saw this and I was like, okay, let's go. Um, so, Safta, you want to repeat your question before I jump in and share something really quickly?
Yeah, I'm just asking, how do you present yourself when you go out, as if you're a new or if you're not? And for the women in the group, you know, are you wearing a covering, uh, such as a head covering, or are you walking out as a covered woman? Because there is a difference.
And I think you said how are you received, or how you receive people and that
Yes, I did.
okay. So as we were looking for, as I was gathering information and just content for chat, and let me, so not in the chat, but if you could see it, how do you present yourself in public? How are you perceived? Um, I was looking at, this is a very famous, well, I don't know about very famous, but very popular uh, female guru, so to speak, who people follow. And as I was looking for content and just information in terms of like the sacredness and the value of women clothing adornment, and specifically looking for what is Hebrew, I noticed an excerpt from a book that really speaks to connecting with the universal energy by way of wearing colors on specific days. But it is exactly a reflection of what you identified. It had nothing to do with colors based on their sacredness or based on their value and their representation, um, nor did it identify a specific Elohim. It just spoke about being connected to the universe, and wearing colors because it just looks good, right? And matching with your sisters too. We are matching, by the way, right now. But that's because we know black is a representation of chaos and the darkness, and we need that light. We need that light from the man, which is the gold and the white. So there is value in understanding the colors instead of just wearing them because they're beautiful. And there's this long list in that book that identifies each color and how what it represents and what types of things it could bring to you if you wear it, as opposed to, well, who am I on the inside, right? Who is the Elohim that I follow internally? Yes, colors have vibration. Yes, actual light has healing powers. Red is for deep emotional healing. That's a truth right there, right? Red light can be used in that way. This is true, but that is still several layers beyond just I'm wearing things because it looks good, right? And because it's fashionable. So I just wanted to quickly share that. And we'll wait a little bit longer for anyone else who wants to jump in, but I know you're there. So unmute and just jump in.
Okay, so I'll answer the question. Um, how do I present my? Well, obviously I'm covered. And how am I perceived? So for the most part, um, it's almost like a, I don't know if this even makes sense, like a silent respect. Like there's a lot of head nods, particularly from men, and not the, like I'm undressing you, and it is more like a I don't want to say reverence, but like a nod to, like, you're not, thotting right now. Like I don't even know how else to say it. Um, like, a covered woman. And then the truth is, like, it was with, I think when I first started wearing my hair covered and wearing like longer skirts, I thought that it was going to like repel people, like, okay, here comes grandma. Like, but it actually, like, people come on more like, oh, I love that skirt, I love that. And I'm only speaking to, like, what I'm perceiving, people perceiving, because I don't even know if I can say how I'm perceived, because I can only gather that based on, reactions and actual words to me. You know what I mean? I don't want to like assume. I can only go by like what has been done and said and behaviors. And so those, that's what I noticed. I also started noticing, and this goes to what you said earlier. What?
I'm reading the chat already. That's why.
Oh.
Sorry.
And this goes to what you said, Safta, about making sure your mind is right. And I realized if I do leave the house and my mind is not right, regardless of what I have on, because then it becomes on you and not in you, it actually invites other things that are unwanted, or not necessarily like, I'm trying to receive that day. But because whatever's going on in my brain is pulling those things. So when you talked about the energy, and you as well, Okoti Maria, like with the colors, that it's a real thing. So like it's not just about like, okay, well, let me go put this on, and hide underneath like the covering, but also like what is actually going on underneath. The other part, so I did want to say something to what you talked about, like the colors. So true. And since I learned about the red thing, I sometimes sleep with like the red bulb. And I know that because that is like, it is sort of like a covering in the room, almost like, the lighting actually changes and it shifts, and it does, make a shift in the room and the mood and whatnot. So, and even if I sleep with a green bulb, a blue bulb, like they all do different things. And also, even when we do, depending on the color that's put on, they do different things, but I think it's acknowledging, like, not just because, oh, it looks good. And don't get me wrong, I think the first thing is like, oh yeah, it looks good, but then it's like, okay, but what is this color representing? What energy is it am I going to exude putting it on? How am I altering it if my mind is in a certain place versus a good place, or a peaceful place, or a chaotic state? So that's my answer.
Shabbat shalom. Welcome, Dr. Naya.
Shabbat shalom, peace. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, because I have the speaker plugged up so I can hear y'all. Um, I was chuckling to myself because actually before I got on, I turned my black light off, so I had the black light on. But how, how I dress, I'm covered when I go out. Like my dresses are knee length or longer, and I think it's funny because this strong. I think it was this strong. Someone at where I work, she was like, "What is your religion? Like, you just look so different. Like, you just, I don't know. I don't want to call you weird, but you're just different." And I was just standing and looking at her like, with a straight, trying not to laugh at her, I guess, lack of what to say or how to categorize me. And I was just like, well, I don't have a religion. I have culture. And I gave her like the first part. I shared the link to the first part. I told her we would be live today at 8 p.m. But we started a conversation. We started a conversation where she got to, get more information about being covered, why, what, what to, I'm sorry, I need to stop watching what you're doing.
Yeah. So watch.
Right. Oh my. Um, oh my gosh. We I'm sorry. Okay. But she was curious because she didn't understand. And when it was more people around, they were like, "Yeah, because it's you know that she's really, really upset. Because when you hear hell come out of her mouth, it's like, oh my gosh, she's cursing." And I'm just like, wow, like you think that's bad? Like I used to say way worse. So even for me, that just showed me how my language has changed. My presentation is different for those for those who are perceiving me and what I'm giving off. How can I close this so I can't see it? What I'm giving off is well received. I'm a mute out because I'm so unfocused right now. But
So stay focused.
I'm
Um,
trying. It's hard. But and same thing, similar to Okoti Yafe, the men, it's like very respectful. It's nods, peace, sister, how you doing? Um, but just pleasant greet, pleasant greet,
pleasant greetings, right?
pleasant greetings, and more respect. They're more inclined to hold an intelligent conversation or say something that makes sense instead of I don't know, just I don't know, like a silly way to say how are you doing today, to lead
Right.
into more conversation. I'm gonna mute out because
Mm.
what is happening?
Mm-mm, you can just remove it. It's okay.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Okay.
Uh,
Lorraine will do it.
it's really something when we talk about, the way we present ourselves. I was looking at Master Menelek's comment, and he was saying, I'm perceived as sort of an oddity due to my silent and reserved nature until on one encounter happens. I'm often known more for what I do uh, before I am for what I say. Which, as I was reading that, I was thinking about before I came into a new, and I for some reason I always thought it was important to talk, and just meeting people everywhere I go. I'm just talking to everybody. I don't care in the store, you know, on my long walks, going through the park, just speaking to people. And a lot of times it would turn into conversations. And at this point, I don't do that anymore. I don't just talk to any and everybody. I greet people with a smile in a friendly manner, but not even I used to really look people in their eye, but I don't do that unless it's someone that I'm engaging with, but to just have that, because to me, it gets intimate for a woman, especially having a conversation with a man who is not her mate or in her community, to look him in the eye. I mean, that it can be so misconstrued. So there's so much that comes along with, and I started as we were going through, um, just doing research and reading up on things. It was so much about a covering that went beyond just the headpiece, and again, we're talking about a physical covering, because again, people, before you open your mouth or get in someone's space, they see you coming. And
Mm-hmm.
like you said, Saftanaya, people wonder. And I have people ask me, um, and they don't, and it's really funny because they don't ask me, "Are you Muslim?" They don't ask me if I'm Muslim. They will ask, "What religion are you?" And a lot of times I'll say, "I'm not a religion," because I'm not. I have a way of life within a community, within a culture, and I don't consider it to be a religious one, because I've been in that in the past. I've been religious, so to speak, and I found for me, and this is not true for everyone, but for me, it was a lot of unknown things. I was just doing as I was told. But within a new, you start off being obedient, but what it becomes as you wisdom, knowledge, and understanding takes part, and then you begin to have an understanding of why you do what you do, why you choose to live the way you choose to live, and that is something I actually realized I had not consciously made a choice to do in my past. I was just living my life and doing what I do and what everybody else was doing, and especially in the church, but again, there comes a lot of discipline because now you know why you do what you do. Um, One of the other things here, peace, Akio Karar, Alpha Woman. Now, Ima Yakira Eden says, "How I present myself in public is with modesty, acknowledgement of my creator and culture." And that is so, when I looked at that, I thought, wow, because when you live a lifestyle, that's what comes out. Your acknowledgement. And when you said the way the guy nod at you, the way I get it, it's not like you said. It's not it's a respectful acknowledgement, and it doesn't come with any implications.
Yeah.
Not side eye and checking you out from your head to your toe, and it's not all that. Matter of fact, and I notice it, and because I return the greeting, but it's
Yeah.
usually a nice smile and nodding of the head, and and it's very respectful. So, and then I quickly look away and keep doing what I'm doing. I don't give it any extra time or
No,
any
right.
extra space,
Yeah.
to
You need to. And I should have specified it's women too. I know I said like only men, but it's women, it's men and women. Um, um, I don't know if it's equally, but it's definitely both men and women. And it was something that I wanted to add on to that because it goes into what you were. It was more that I left off about like the energy, and it's the idea like the being covered, like we show our culture, right? Like even like when a woman is covered, she is actually showing her culture. So like we're and I think that goes to like some of the questions that you get because I think maybe we all get them. I get those as well. Like what religion are you? I get those as well. I don't think anybody called me weird, which was kind of rude. But like like I think that was rude. But I do get the and maybe what religion are you is rude too because does it matter? But but I think like people ask that question, so it's like let me ask so that I know how to behave around you. There's some of that in that as well, so I know not to be a certain way, which is part of the like when a woman is covered, she's showing her culture. um and it's kind of like yeah it is like I'm not to be trifled with, and not like a who gonna check me, boo. Not from that kind of, standpoint, but like a um not to be disrespected. I'll say it like that. And the other part about the covering, like why it is so important about like how what our mindset and our energy is, because you do have women who are covered, but they'll still go around and I think Chief talked about it. I can't remember if it was this most recent 98 or 97. I think it was 98, about like the I'm conscious, but I'm gonna lower myself so I can relate to the other people. So there is a cohort that will be covered, but they're still doing the same ratchet things that Babylon is, and they're cussing while they're talking about something. I recently saw something where it was a young woman who was covered, and she was just describing something at her place of employment, and I was just like, yeah, well, you talking like everybody else, like but she was like covered from head to toe, and I was just like, so it just reminded me of the, like, as everybody says, like at this point, like the in you and not on you. I guess that's the everybody comment. By
And
way of
we know that's from Chief Yuya. That's
right.
Chief who says that. But and you know what? And that's so. At that point, it's a costume. As far as it's not even you just doing it for the style or the fashion of it. But and that's why I like to repeat myself when I talk about the new way, because I love it when it says the wardrobe provides a barrier between your evolving truth consciousness, you know. And in the new way, when I first read that, I thought, I'll be honest with you, I didn't really understand what it meant because I read the new way when it first came out. And one of the things is to read the book out loud every day, and I can't honestly say I've always done that, but I find myself reading it more every day now, because I understand what I'm reading. And before, I was just kind of memorizing what was in the book, like, oh, that's what a new does. That's what I'm expected to do. But again, as time goes on, you learn it's not just what you do, but it's how you live, it's what you invest in. And we were talking in the women's group one on Sabbath, and I remember we were talking about dress, the way we dress. And I remember about a month after I had finished orientation, I realized that I had 5 dresses in my closet. Everything else was pantsuits, pants. It was. I had 5 dresses, and I thought, "Oh my, this isn't gonna work." You know what I mean? And then again, I went out, and it gave me a reason at the time to just go crazy. I'm gonna get a scarf. I'm gonna buy head coverings. And again, I had to really evaluate my energy. And as time goes on, as the knowledge sets in, like you said, Akotiafe, it's the whole. It comes with that whole package. I can't say that enough. Um, there was another scripture that I really thought was it really fit in because I believe I was just looking at it when you were talking, but it's I'll find it as we go on and build more, but I'll come
So
back to it.
I know I want us to jump back to the chat. But part of the bill this evening too is to, show just show what Hebrew culture looks like, what Hebrew people wear. So we're getting into the context of it. Um, but there are, when it comes to head coverings, we covered clothing and other aspects of the earthly wardrobe for Hebrew people, Anu people. Um, in our previous episode. But like today, you probably noticed all we're talking about and hitting on is the idea of the covering. So when we talk about head coverings, we're talking about this is women from ancient Near Eastern culture, right? and Safta have a spoke on other cultures as well too. Um, but these cultures had these head coverings that did not just include what we see today as a hijab, right? Or the hair call, right? And if you're looking for, if you're like, well, hair call, a call. Well, that's in one of G's songs. But if you look up, because I looked up this. This was a while back, and I say that because there's also the call or the covering of veil. But it's interesting that it's always all connected to veil, right? A veil is a covering, right? It's a thing that hides, right, or conceals. So I think about the head coverings that we've been talking about, and the veil is one of them, right? There are really elaborate veils and headdresses that Hebrew women wear, brides wear, women who are in a union, have gone through courtship and are betrothed. They're beautiful if you look at the adorning. We wear scarves, right? Scarves are another part of it. And those scarves are like very similar to a fall, right? So if there are any women who are familiar with, I guess, the religion of Rastafari, you would see women wearing a fall, which is a piece of fabric that drapes over the head and covers the shoulders. And so it's another layer of protection that goes over the, and some of them are longer and some of them are not. Um, and to speak to, I mean, we're talking about women and their head coverings, but men also wore head coverings too. Their head coverings were specifically turbans, right? So the fabric was not draped in similar kind to the woman, but there is a wrapping and a twisting of the fabric around the head. So we see the value of the head covering very prominent in both the men and the women, right, as part of the culture. And again, going back to that idea of the barrier, Safta, that a way to separate, right, not just that spiritual separation, which we'll talk about on another episode, but there is a literal physical barrier. Priests wore this as well too. Other types of head coverings included scarves as well. So these head coverings, again, fabric, just literally making sure that you have fabric that created a veiling or a covering, and a separation for the woman. And in some biblical references, we actually see where, like, there is a woman who presents herself to Yahweh in the Greek Testament, where she is I guess this is her way of asking for repentance. She gathered oil and proceeded to anoint his feet, and she used her hair. And so I always think about the fact that she did not use her head covering; she used her hair. And I know in that story, this woman is depicted as a sinner. The Pharisee kind of says, like, if this man is a prophet, he wouldn't, if he only knew, like, this is a sinner, you know she was an uncovered woman and did not have a veil on. So I do think that you're laughing, but I think that there are all these small references within scripture to show us the differences between, women who are wearing head coverings and women who do not. And I was even reading a little bit about the expectation for women who were not Hebrew women, and in coming into a Hebrew uh, family or Hebrew home, they would have to strip themselves down to almost shaving their heads and shift into a Hebrew culture and Hebrew life to show that you're removing all of the other cultural connections that you have had before, and then almost like starting fresh, you know and there's another one too that I wanted to point out, and it might seem like it's going, but I think it's so important to look at also the idea of what a covering is and how it represents vow, right? How it represents vows, how it represents, being in a covenant with others. Ruth does that. Like she on the threshing floor, I believe. Yeah, jump on in, Miss Ruth. I know everything there is to know about Ruth. because she asks Boaz to cover her, so we see that there is this idea of covering, not just a physical covering, but it is a representation of being in covenant or marriage for that matter. And it's represented too, even when um, they speak about tearing garments, right? Tearing a garment or covering as a representation of this,
The
tearing a covenant or breaking a covenant, or cutting ties with a thing. So there's just so many different implications when we talk about the head covering, and it not just be for display.
That's right. When you said that, and again, I know we are talking about uh, on this build about our head covering, but I think when you said that, it made me think that the first time that blood was shed was in the garden when Yeshua had to cover Adam and Eve, and he had to shed blood of an animal in order to do it because they realized they were naked, because of sin. And when you said that, about the many layers, again, we're talking about, but just think about that. And it gets deeper. And that's when it does come down to the woman and her head covering. And what I'm speaking about is when they they partook, when Eve, um, Hawa, when she invited Adam to take a bite of the apple. And then when the Most High came looking for him, and he said, where are you? And he said, we hid because we were naked, you know. And at that point, he killed an animal. Blood was shed in order to make clothes to cover them. So from the time in the beginning, there was a reason to be covered. But as time went on and, man evolved and woman evolved, it still is necessary that we remember, the patriotic order of things, with the Most High being the one that is pouring into the man, and the man is the one that pours into the woman. And as you mentioned earlier, Koti Maria, as far as why we do wear our heads covered, and it is respect to our master. That is showing that we are covered, and that's when he's not there. Everywhere we go, and that's why we, as in women, even if we're not made it, we cover our hair because we are still covered, and that's part of our culture, part of the new culture. Chief says no blood from Adam's rib extraction. So I'm not sure what that means. No blood from Adam's rib extraction.
So when Hawa was pulled from Adoma's side, was there blood? It was an extraction.
He says no blood from. I was, yeah, because I was speaking of when they both needed to be covered. Um, that was after the deed was done in the garden, the partaking of the fruit, the forbidden fruit. But he says no blood from Adam's
So it's a
rib
question.
The
extraction.
question.
So it's a question.
Oh, it's a question. No blood. Isn't that something? Because there was never any description. When he put him to sleep, he took a rib, you know, it wasn't surgery. So I'm thinking, well, did he reach in and just pull it out? Hands clean? I don't know. I don't know. That I've never actually, see, I never actually thought about that.
Maybe we should get into it.
Maybe
Like,
we should.
if it's the sky people, then I imagine he was put to sleep, like with some sort of anesthetic, and there would be a shedding of blood, because if we go back to like sky people and that story of how humans were
Now
created.
the sky people were the powerful ones, and could they move things with their mind? Could they do things with their mind?
Mhm.
I
So
can see it. I kind of thought about that too,
You
because I'm like,
know,
well,
that's what I'm thinking. You know, I wouldn't think they needed to shoot him up with, some knockout drugs or nothing like that.
I mean,
You
well,
know,
I
you
didn't
know,
think about
I'm
it.
thinking, I'm
I
thinking
mean,
they can.
not now today anesthesia, but
You said anesthetic. I'm like, no, I don't think they had IV going
they
on.
had plenty of herbs that'll put him to sleep in the garden. They had plenty of herbs. It didn't
That's
have to
true.
be like sleepy juice.
Now that's true. That's true.
but wasn't it a part where it's like, well, he was cloned? I mean, Eve's a clone of Adam.
That's true.
So is it necessarily gonna be bloodshed if you clone? Because that
Well,
just
wouldn't a clone be the same thing? A clone would not be different. Like, so if you think about he created he and she them, it was like the duality of man and woman. And then they were split when he pulled Hawa from
from
Adam.
him.
But would that be a clone?
Remember that also power was pulled from the thoughts, from the mind of Adoma. So, and I mean, yeah, I think about that too. Maybe there was bloodshed, but I think about the fact that Adoma was pulled from the mind.
I think we got it.
Bloodshed from the dark side.
And
Dark side. Well,
So,
so
so Chief is saying that, and Adam said, "This is this time it is the bone from my bone and the flesh from my flesh. This one will be called woman because she was taken from man. She was taken from man." Um, and Master Minik said, "Wasn't that the point of extraction referred to as a wound?" Wound. So
That's
now
it.
they're gonna make me think about it.
Well, Chief does say for Adoma to have an earthly covering, he had to shed his own blood.
His own blood. Ah,
Dome means blood in Hebrew.
Toda for the correction and the enlightenment. So that would have been the first time blood was shed. But that's even more, that's even deeper because her being taken from the rib, he shed his blood for her. So it gets really intimate there, you know? Because,
he's her
and
covering.
Yeah.
what were you saying, Softa?
No, I'm
Women,
just saying he's her covering.
Yeah, yeah,
what
yeah, he is her covering.
is the
Yeah. And that's so
exsanguinate.
don't so Master Menelik is saying, and the Lord caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept, and he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh instead thereof. And she says, dome in Hebrew means blood, a dome. Yes, moral of the story, woman will bleed you dry. Oh, I was gonna make a state. I was gonna say something about who bleeds, but we maybe that's why we do every month, right?
Well, I don't know if this is really, maybe it's a reach, but it made me think of when she talked about like the scarlet, like, and that scarlet being related to the blood. And it, one thing that I thought about was like, the how we're connected through the blood. And one of the story, I can't remember the story he used, but as I was listening to the podcast, it made me also think of the blood, how they clothed in when they were in Kemet, when they were enslaved in Kemet, and when the last plague came through, they dressed the doors in scarlet, in lamb's blood, to signify like this is the house. And it was the story of Rahab, when she put the thread outside of the door, like, and he was relating that to clothed in scarlet, and that red thread outside of the door let them know, don't touch anybody in this house. If they leave the house, then that's on them, but if we go in and touch anybody in that house, then that's on us. And then it made me think of the idea of like clothing the houses in the houses and domiciles or dwelling places of the Hebrews in Kemet with that blood, as a signifying like the shedding of blood, so that when Yah moved through the streets, it was like, touch not my anointed. So it's like I know which houses I'm going to.
So right, so they're covered, as you're saying. That there is that covering from and protection.
Yeah.
So going back to that, the time it is this time it is the bone from my bone and the flesh from my flesh. I think about DNA. Like I think about the bone marrow and pulling that specific reference to bone from my bone, because even if we were talking about that cloning rather, well to say replicating the DNA, but why not? Why not? But I think about the use of bone marrow to identify and isolate and replicate. Because the moral is it the moral of the story? Because oh gosh. Did we read we had a couple of answers. Did we read Alpha Woman Now's response? No? Let me not do that because I'm about to put somebody in timeout. Sorry, Margie Marie. All right, if you're in timeout, I apologize. That was a sip of the hand. Sorry. Anyway, okay, let's go back a little bit, just to highlight because I appreciate
Yeah, we did read
sharing.
hers, but
We did.
Margie Marie's was next. Uh-huh.
I She says I present myself in attire that's modest with my hair covered. People tend to be extremely respectful. Even a working setting, coworkers may ask what's acceptable or what may not be in terms of certain engagements. Sometimes I'll get asked if I'm a Muslim. Muslim, okay. But sometimes no questions are asked. She says, I've experienced walking down a sidewalk full of older guys behind a young lady who was dressed in pants, a top, and two afro puffs. And the guys were just hooting and hollering at her. However, when public domain, when I passed by and the guys backed up and just politely nod their heads, one guy took his hat off and said hello. It was a completely different reaction than what the young lady passing in front of me received.
Mm-hmm.
She also says one thing I learned is that there's a spiritual knowing and conversation that's happening when you're covered. Even as a little girl walking in my neighborhood, people knew if you had a father covering. People knew if you had a father covering you. Right, right.
Yeah, you know what? When her comment reminded me of, I don't know, it was some years ago, but like not like post Anu, and there, and I think I guess it still happens. There's this. So okay, I'll start this way. So remember, during part one of this conversation, we talked about like you can go ahead and dress a certain way, but then you are put into a certain category, and then that's what it is. And so what her Margie Marie's comment about like how the young woman was dressed, or the female was dressed, reminds me of that. It's like, yeah, you could go ahead and wear this, and I have gone out and worn things too, and it's like, well, that means I was put in a certain category, and that's what it is. You're either going to be dressed as the wife or wife in training category, if there's a such thing, or you're going to be in the harlots and everybody else, or the public property, and that's what it is. But the other thing is, I find it interesting that there is a I don't know how to call it, but people, namely women, females, get upset with the hooting and the hollering that Margie Marie talked about. Like, when they're hooted and hollered at. right? And it's like, and she did talk about this in the podcast as well. I think it was 96. And it's like, you know, but then most of it is like just because I want to stand out with my boobs out or my breasts out. I just want to show my body parts and leave nothing to the imagination. But then I'm gonna get upset that the reaction that I actually was going for is actually coming my way, which is insane to me. I don't know if that would be cognitive dissonance or just insanity. I don't know which one that is. But it's like, you know, what is that about? Like you're dressing in a way where you want a specific reaction, so then when you get it, you're upset by it. What is that? I mean, and I don't think that's not a question for us to maybe ponder, but like it was just something that I thought of with Margie Marie's comment.
It's confusion and, like a false idea of, what it is that people want. And I think to some degree that you've mentioned this before, and you see it all the time, like women talk about how equal they are and everything, and it that's anchored to the fact that they could walk down the street half naked and be upset with everybody for, objectifying them, right?
Mm-hmm.
um and then turn around and say, well, it's almost like I'm more. But the truth is, you're not giving anybody
Right.
an opportunity to engage with the more, or
Mm.
engage with that part of you that goes beyond just your physical flesh, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And you're right, there are some women who dress in a particular way. I want to talk about the women who, them girls, oh gosh. I can't go. Think about, I think you mentioned this earlier, the idea of fashion. Some women wear, they'll wear the long clothes, they'll dress modestly, but it it's sad. They'll dress modestly, but it's because it's a fashion trend, right? There is literally a name for, wearing a covering over your long dress, and, wearing a tights underneath, or, a tunic with a long skirt, and making sure that you're covered. Like that's a fashion statement. I think you mentioned it earlier, Safta. Different people wear head wraps and coverings and so on, and some of it is just fashion. And you could tell because the language is the same like the secular world.
Yeah.
The ideas that they hold, the concepts that they hold, true and dear to them, those are pretty much very similar or exactly a reflection of the secular world. um
Mhm.
and so I go ahead.
Oh, I was just thinking when you were saying earlier about how women want to, they think it's a part of their equality to be able to dress the way they want. But I was thinking when you said that, now it's changing all the time. But when women started wearing all the revealing clothes, I don't recall men feeling like, I mean, women going to the club with, you know, little of nothing on, but men didn't come naked. You know what I'm saying? So what was equal about that? They weren't revealing, all that a woman's revealing. So that speaks volume. That like they were the commodity on the shelf to be bought. The man, he didn't have to show nothing. He just had to come look and see, and it's like buying the prize beef, at the butcher shop. You know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah, you look at all the different, things that's being advertised, and state your price, and
You're
that's what
selling.
it was like, right?
You're selling. Yes, you're selling. You're
Yeah.
I'm
selling. And
prime prize is beef.
cheap.
Well, you know what I mean. I would, prime beef. And we don't eat beefs like that, so that's not saying a lot for what it's representing. Uh, Minai, what you say? Rump roast, hind quarters. Yeah, yeah. I mean, but again, like you said, that's it's insanity. What are you doing? And yet you wonder why women get raped. You know what I'm saying? You're out there showing everything. I think Chief posted another. What was this? Oh, when he was talking about the prize of virginity, and he was saying it was an advertisement of a woman that spent all these thousands of dollars to take her back to, well, she surgically wanted to seem like a virgin, but I don't care how much surgeon you have, that it can't give you back what you done lost. You know what I'm saying? And surgery can't replace that. So Chief says beef. Well, the man has to show his wealth, social status, potential, and for violence. True, true. So I guess everybody is you know out on the market. She showing what she got, and he's presuming what he got. You know, and I guess that comes through by way of what, flashing, you know, spending money and having that car, and but again, that means nothing because he could be in hock up to his eyebrows behind that what he's flashing. So it, I hate to say it, but I'm gonna say it: the Matrix. Here we go with the Matrix. You know what I'm saying? So,
Let's say
uh,
Neo 5 times.
yeah,
True.
So you got to
It,
say Neo 5 times.
you-
yeah.
it makes me think of a piece from Noir Mail, which is directly connected to a post as well too that Chief gave, which is when melanin dominant male and female begin to see one another as enemies, they frequently isolate thoughts without comprehending the fact that it is the social structure of white supremacy racism which taught them to hate one another. So there is that. I do think there is that constant fight between, you know I want to be so much of what I want to be, that I even see what a man desires of me as a threat. Like if he even says this is what I desire, it's like, but you know, so come over here with what you think I should be. Like you're controlling me. Like, these it's sad. And then I put myself out there in what Margie Marie expressed earlier, tights and a top and puffs and so on, and I get hollered at, and I have a problem with it. But that's what you're showing. That's
Yeah.
what and you get upset or you get angry, but the truth is, what do you expect the response to be? How do you
Right.
and when men of noble character and righteous men say, this is what I want, you proceed to walk out the door as if you're buddy beef yeah, for yeah, as if you're beef, rather, as if you're beef on show for sale. So it's just this quote just helps me understand more and more. When we see those things, we have to realize we're in um constant confrontation with each other. And no matter what it is that a righteous man says he wants, if you're constantly thinking with that secular mind, and your construct of how you engage is based on whatever the secular will says is the standard, then there's no place for, like, I don't want to use the word compromise, but there's no place for complementarity. That's the phrase I'm going to use. There's no space for that.
You made me think of like the same thing. Like it's like I get upset, but then I also want to turn around and say that the women who are covered are oppressed and they need my help. That's that other piece of that, which is so arrogant. It's so arrogant.
So in response to Margie Marino, if I see stuff like that, I'm hitting delete on my software very quickly, very quickly. If I see it, delete, erase, erase all the time. Oh my goodness, this is
See it.
crazy. Yeah,
See.
yeah. And I'm not in those places, right? Because if I'm in the club, that's what I'm gonna see.
Mm.
Because if I'm in the club, that ain't. I'm not, functioning from being separate. So I'm in the
Yeah.
world, and if
You,
I'm in the world, I'm gonna be exposed to.
mhm. At one time I could agree if you were in the club, but now I was in the supermarket. I was in the supermarket, and yeah, he had on a fishnet top and little nipple, and Aki said, "Stop staring, Mom." I was like, "Why did he come in here like that?" I mean, because he caught me off guard. I'm sorry, In my day, that was not allowed. But anything goes these days. So excuse me if I stare, because, and it's not because it looked good. My mouth. I'm sure my mouth was open. I'm sure, because Aki kind of hunched me, and he said, "Mom, stop staring." I'm like,
Stuff
"Why you
there.
why you come in here like that? Why you do that?" Yeah, I didn't understand it, but I also do understand there's a lot of mental illness out there, these days that are, when I grew up, we had mental hospitals. So maybe that kept some of it from being on the streets. They got rid of them. And I think that was the worst thing they could have done, is get rid of the mental hospitals. But,
I I don't.
huh?
I
Not
don't we
like they used to. Every state they called them state mental they were paid for by the state, and if you were diagnosed to have a mental illness where you could not do for yourself or be taken care of, the state took that on, but not anymore. That's been long gone. They just let them all out on the streets now. So
you know you're not the only one. I can't help it. Like if it's like live in front of my face, and especially I think I low key stare as well. I can't. It's
low
what
key.
I kind of like what's happening right now. Like it's when I think we probably. I know you delete it, Maria. You be like blinders, but like I think like right. Like I think when I can control it, if it comes across the TV, I'm like nope, nope, nope. But if I'm like live, it is like a what's happening, and I am having like this dialogue in my head, like what is going on. But I think yeah, like maybe there does need to be like a shut your not running the traffic or anything, but like kind of just don't look, don't let it in.
I know
Because
my question is like, what is that or what was that? And just let me refocus because it doesn't look like anything that it should look like. And if I do look, I'm going to stare and have that full focus
Yes,
and
yeah,
like, what is going on here from top to bottom? So let me just
yeah.
look away. Let me
Look,
look
That's
I
away.
got caught off guard.
like
I got
happy.
caught off
Like
guard, and
there.
and I couldn't pull my eyes away because I was stuck. I was like trying to figure it out, and that's what Aki had to, Isaiah had to actually get my attention so I could walk away, because, like you
Yeah.
said, it's not anything I need to focus on, but it was new, and it was like I hadn't seen that particular, not, I mean, on TV. And then I changed the station because every station they got people kissing on each other now, and which made me just leave the TV off, because it's like everything got that in it now. you
Yeah,
know
I like it was you, Maria. We were watching a program and ended up fast forwarding through a
yeah,
good
and
like
then yeah, and
yes,
then
but
eventually
yeah, you got
stopped
discouraged.
watching. Oh,
What?
sorry. No, I said, and then eventually stopped watching it because I was like, nah, like
Yeah,
you're all in there. That's why the mentality sometimes is to leave, and I'm not watching you perform because you're performing. And what you're not going to do is get a real woman to distract herself with your falsity. That's not happening, not today, not ever. It may have
yeah,
happened before. I would probably ogle a little bit and be like, yeah, what's going on? Mm-mm. A very wise Jegna said to me, do not follow crazy down the rabbit hole to figure out nothing. No,
yeah.
So we will not be doing that. I just speaking for myself, I will not be doing that. I'm not, it's not happening because I'll say this too. Like, there's an agenda attached to that, and I want, like, for us to move back to the actual righteous culture, but there's an agenda attached to that. When I see these things, my brain becomes, it's like I get accustomed to seeing it, right? It makes me compliant, it makes me open,
Mm-hmm.
it makes me eventually say, oh, like, that's the norm. It's not normal. It is not normal. But when we get overexposed to it in that way, like you said, Safta, somebody said on the laundry detergent aisle, yes, they're in the right aisle, actually. They need some washing. So it's like, can you imagine? Can you imagine? Like, we see these things all the time, and you just, you flip by it, or you say, are you constantly trying to figure out what it is? Eventually it becomes norm. It is not normal, and every time I see it, I'm like, this is dysfunction, this is dysfunctional, and it doesn't belong in this space, in my brain. But eventually, over time, we get accustomed to it, and they do that with our youth. It happens with our youth all the time. So I do think that's part of the covering. That's part of dressing modestly, and
Yeah,
a head covering. It separates us on a spiritual level too from some of that is not what we should be taking in. It's not
yeah.
what we should be engaging with either.
That veil also works as a shield.
Well, I was thankful my covering was with me that day, and he immediately got my attention. And but he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm sorry, caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting to see that in the store." He said, "You just have to turn away and not look, and to be reminded, because, like I said, that wasn't that's yeah." And because I easily turn the TV off, like what you're saying, or switch the channel, you
Mhm.
know. So that's just something we're always doing, and it gets back to the layers of protection that we've got.
Mm-hmm.
So Sequoia responded. Oh, go ahead, Saf. Oh, Sequoia responded. She said, same as what the other sister. Okay. She says, I think I'm perceived. She dresses modestly, and she thinks she's perceived with respect because she's rarely approached. This was not the case a few years ago. Rarely approached is true. And whoever could say peace, I'm not even hearing. Not unless maybe you need something and you come up to me and stop abruptly in front of me. I'm over there. Like, if I'm heading to 10 feet, I'm so focused on over there because, yeah, I can't, we can't let ourselves be even pulled in by sometimes, because sometimes it's that one greeting, right? Sometimes people are just adjusting their greeting just to get us, to pull us in, right? And people are very good at that, right? Manipulating situations, seeing, yeah, this person, they're respectable, they dress this way, let me use the hotep on them,
And
right?
yeah,
Use the shalom on.
but that doesn't mean we're not always aware of what's going on around us and who's moving around us, because that's just part of, our of that being aware of the space we're in. Because anytime we're in a public space outside of our community, it's just and if a covering is not with us, it's just that's just something I always am just aware of. I'm aware of who's behind me if I'm in the grocery store, or to the side of me, and I'm just leery that way. I just don't like, and that's because society has changed a lot. As I've grown older, I've seen a lot of things, you know, come out of the closet that you didn't used to be. So, but you're absolutely right. Being rarely approached is a good thing, and yeah, they have to go out their way to get your attention, more or less.
Um, we chief. Let me see how far up we are. I think we're like
There's a lot.
I'm lost. Yes. Well, we're here. So Master Menelek says, so instead of wearing the wardrobe of one who is looking to cover or be covered by their natural counterpart, the wardrobe and stance is now aimed at insecurely guarding against your compliment. Hey. Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right. So no, wow. That's deep. So it's like you're wearing whatever it is. Wow. It's like a repellent then. It becomes a repellent. I don't know what's in the chat. Clearly, it's something because everybody's folding their lips and laughing. So I'll just keep it moving. Or maybe I did something wrong. I don't know. I'm gonna keep moving. Because we behind. um, Marjorie Marie says she was traumatized. Yes, ma'am. Delete. Abort. Download. Delete. Delete. I'll take a nap. um, she says, Booty B, okay, yes. Well, at some point, you have to see that it is demonic rulership establishing spiritual insanity. Jezebel makes the children of the Most High commit sexual immorality. Right? Right. Um, everybody's cracking up. Master Manilik says, you mean that white van that would pull up, throw you in the trunk, and give you a complimentary white jacket? Oh gosh, okay. That what you were laughing at? Because that's funny. Um,
That's back when we were talking about the mental institutions. They used to have, yeah, you get to acting too crazy, you find yourself on the third floor. No, I think it was called the seventh floor. And one of them jackets, that with your hands can't move. Oh yeah, not that I haven't been there.
Rubber,
I don't want
rubber.
to describe it too well.
Bouncing.
Actually, you know what? I was acting up, and my mother was at a nursing school at the time, and she actually, that's how I found out about it, because she said, "I'm gonna show you." You know what? She took me to this mental. It was on a Saturday too. She drove me 160 miles to the state mental hospital, and took me in there and took me for a tour and said, "Now these people is crazy. You run around acting like you crazy, but these people really are meant that. So you need to act like you got some sense, because these people have no choice and you do." But that was just one of the lessons that so I actually did get to tour a mental institution, when they were still actually, and every state had them. Every single state had them. So as time went on, I think it was in the Nixon era, he decided that they weren't going to spend no more government money on crazy people.
I
So
know they're outside walking in fishnet stockings and a fuss in your brain in the laundry aisle. Okay? That's what's happening.
I'm so sorry. It was the way you said it.
Wow. Yes, no. So Maji Marie says something very important here and crucial. If it's not business related, there's no conversation. That's right. If it's not business related, there's no conversation. I observe that's why I think it was a couple strongs ago. Chief asked us, about engaging with men, or if somebody has to say something to you, what do you observe? Well, I think the question was along the lines about what do you observe about men that show they respect, I think, themselves. I think that was the question. But a few of us were on here and we were and please correct me if the question is skewed. I know it is because I know I don't have it correct. But I think I believe one of the things I said was, um, men who don't just approach women because they're from a different religion, right? So Muslim men who are aware of the fact that their women are not and should not engage with other men, and should not respond to other men who, approach them, but they will approach other women, right? Especially knowing that you're dressed a certain way. So, yeah, you're covered, and that means you have a covering, you have a master. So, like this territory is off limits, But that idea of not interacting or not having any conversation with any man for that matter, unless his business is very it's important because it is an additional barrier that you put in place. It is an additional. I think about when I'm around, and someone shared with me, and I think I can't remember who, but I remember making that observation too. Like women of a certain ethnicity, um, they're not paying any attention to any other man who comes into their. It could be on the playground, and they say, chica, whatever it is that they're saying, and that's it. They don't care who's there unless it's about paying attention to who's getting close to their family members, or also the children, of course, I'm speaking of. Um, yeah, Hispanic women specifically, a woman from that ethnicity, like they are, and I mean no offense at all. I actually think it is admirable because there is no infiltration whatsoever. Yes, okay. All right. I did not. I did not. I didn't
Which
remember. Okay.
part? Which part?
Which part of what? Which
Part.
part of
Never mind. It's probably all of it. Never mind.
Oh, no, the part about women of specific ethnicity,
Oh,
Hispanic women specifically, do not engage with other men who come into the stair space, nothing, unless it's just to make sure, okay, these my children are safe, but that's it. They don't acknowledge, they don't even, eyes don't leave down here, so like at
but
all, you
particular
know?
group. It is also like within that demographic. It's a particular group. It's not all. Like I think some who are more Babylonian, your Cardi B's and whatnot. Like they they check in. But yeah, but I've seen what you're talking about. Like I feel like we had this conversation before. I feel like we had this conversation. I just had a deja vu. Yeah, like they're not like everything is about what's happening with the family.
That's it. Oh, you got cut? Are you there still?
No, I was something you said before. You talked about like the master, right? And it made me think of our study session recently about the command to be fruitful and master the earth, and then also thinking about like what that hierarchy should be: Elohim, man, junior woman, children. And going back to what you were talking about, Safta, with Adoma, like when he listened to the woman and he ate the apple and he didn't have it in check, it was like Yah was like, okay, well, I'm not your covering. Since you're going and you're reversing the order, it's 2 and 1, and you're listening to her and you're not doing what I told you to do, you're not mastering. I'm not your master. So here, take these clothes and this will be your covering. Since you're not paying attention to how I'm covering you, since you're not appreciative of how I'm covering, and it just made me think of that, like when you just use the word master, Maria.
Yeah, this is true. This is true. You chose something else. So, you chose to be uncovered. It's kind of like leaving the abode of your father. You walk away from there and you kind of just sit uncovered because you're unmated. You're not in a union, you know? Um,
And the when we were looking through about covering head covers, there was a couple of different communities or cultures where I noticed soon as a young girl becomes a woman, I believe at 12, 13, at that point she has to start wearing her hair covered, and I, what it made me think about was at that point, she is covered by her father, but now, at one time, 13, 14. In some cultures, that's marrying age. You become a woman, you can have babies now, so you can get married. And sometime it was for wealth. The father would already have his daughter promised to someone else, and but they start wearing their hair covered at a young age. And what it made me think about is when we don't even begin to teach our young women, when they start busting out, because I remember when I got to middle school, my mother, she knew everything I wore every single day. But once I got that gym locker at school, I remember taking and putting certain little short skirts in there, and I would change when I got to school, and before I hit that bus to come home, I would change, back into the clothes I was supposed to be wearing. And you know what? It's really something when you do that, because I did that when I was young. And do you know my granddaughter? I busted her one day because I thought, okay, I think I know what she's doing. She'd leave a certain way every day, and I just happened to get off work early. I said, I'm gonna go by her school and see. And she had on something totally different. I said, I said, and she was coming up the hallway, and I had my camera phone out, and she goes, "Oh, Granny, what are you doing?" I said, "I want your mama to see how you look at school." She goes, "No." She started crying right then and there in the middle of the hallway, and I thought about it. And again, it made me think about when Chief said, when Jezebel raised their children, the children of the Most High, we caused them to be immoral. We cause them to sin. And it starts at a very young age, because the culture I was speaking about, the mother has already set a precedent. So it's no big deal. When the girl knows she hits 12, 13, she knows she got to wrap it up. At school, she knows she's got to wear that long skirt, whereas she might, get to run around the playground up until that point. But we don't establish a time frame to even help our young women transition into the rightful way. Instead, they watching a hoochie mama, go out to be with her girlfriends and how she's dressing. So as soon as they get the opportunity, which is why my granddaughter did what I did and snuck the clothes to school and hid them out, because we didn't dress like that at home. So she knew she had to hide out. She couldn't just leave the house like that. But even then, again, being covered and teaching that to our young women, is so important. You know, I was actually really impressed when we were on one of the retreats, and one of our sisters, Yakira Eden, when I saw her daughter, because she can do a rap way better than I can. You know what I'm saying? I mean, she know how to work a scarf. And I think that's so important that they start off when they should, because now, again, they're developing into that sacredness of womanhood. And if we don't teach them when they're young, a matter of fact, you are teaching them by the example you set, you know. So it just, as I was listening to you and you were talking about master, and again, you were talking about that study we had about, mastering our bodies, and how the man has to master the woman, and it just made me really think about where it all starts. And even now, where we are, where we start. So, yeah, I was thinking about that.
Your story reminds me of, I think it's very similar, because I guess this is the in between. Where did the young lady change her clothes? right? I literally stood on a bus stop and watched. Yes, this is in Brooklyn, across the street, on the corner, a young lady undressing and changing her clothes right on the corner. I am serious. And I had to, bus was coming. I didn't care. I walked across the street and I said something to her. But this is in Bedford Stuyvesant, Brooklyn. And yeah, that was not, nobody was, she didn't look for a corner or a post or nothing to hide. She was just, she knew I had to change from what I'm wearing back into something else to get home. And so I'm going to change back right here on this corner, a couple hundred feet away from where my the apartment door is, but that's what I'm going to do, you know?
Mm-hmm. Cause it's like I have to get far enough away from school so nobody sees me, but it's a strategic point. And strategy has nothing to do with like whether it's private or not. It's just the timing of when it is. Like, does everybody see me? It goes back to Akio Karar, like his show improved right now on Neely Fuller. It's the showing off, right? It's the I gotta show off in school. Somebody gotta see me in my outfit, but I know I'm not supposed to be wearing it. So I gotta get far enough so everybody sees that I wore it for the day, but I have to find a strategic point before I get home. I have to, because if I get off the bus and I'm wearing this, it's possible that somebody might be outside and see that I had on something different. So she probably changed at the same bus stop. Well, the opposite corner. Go, because it's like, because whoever might be on the bus, they got to see me from this point to this point.
Right. Um,
Oh, I was going to say if you were going to go back to the chat,
yeah,
because
go ahead.
I wasn't sure where you left off.
Um, I think it was Margie Marie. She has a question, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did any of the women of Anu find it challenging at first to not speak to other men, even in small talk or speaking?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say I didn't, because other than a greeting, what do we got to talk about? You know what I'm saying? I, what do we have in common?
Yeah. I would say it not necessarily a challenge to not, because I think the men that I would speak to would be um, at work, so that was business. However, I do think for me there was like recognizing the line between business and small talk, even though it might have been somebody that I worked with, because even in that there has to be a line. So like I think and I see all the like not at all, not at all. I think like, well, do we have to think back at what point did it not become business and you were doing small talk with men at work that was not business related?
Right.
Because it happens.
It does happen. And I won't say, maybe that's the challenge, like finding that cutoff point. Because you all know, like I have lots of Uber stories that I talk about, and a lot of them end up there isn't a lot of conversation, because there are times when questions are asked and I'm listening to a podcast and that becomes my response. It's like, I'm a part of this community, feel free to explore XYZ. Or that's a question for the brothers and in my community. And so those are the things that I would do. At the very beginning though, I would say yes, because at that time it was vending and engaging in conversation. And yes, some of those conversations were business conversations. It was about like my vending and things like that. But there was a time when it was like, I did not pay attention to that small talk.
Right.
I had to realize, oh no, this is not even within the scope of, well,
Work.
work,
That's
right? Or,
right.
or business or whatever. So yeah, no, I would not say, I wouldn't say it was a challenge because it wasn't like I was putting up a resistance to doing it, didn't want to do it. It was really from a place of understanding, like where is that cutoff? When does it cut off? And you stop and you pull away. Yeah, yeah, and yeah, I mean, even down to past experiences and re-engaging and them asking questions and understanding, no, like there is a boundary,
Mm.
and you walk away. I think there was a time in one of the cars I was asked a question, and I said, my response was, like, there yeah, there are just some things that you can't engage, and you have to say no. This is where you go to answer this question. I'm not, like, I cannot speak on these things, but you can engage the brothers here at this community. Feel free to do so. And I know sometimes it sounds, because I do see the glances, and you could feel the, what do you call it? What do you call it? The air. You could
And
feel like the tension is like, okay, that's weird, but you just keep it moving. You keep it moving. So I wouldn't always.
I think the reason I didn't have a challenge is because once I came into a new, and I remember learning that, okay, in a new we do not date, and so I remember uh, where I worked at the time, I was still going in to the office at the hospital, and they were just a bunch of flirtatious, ratchet, vulgar men that they didn't necessarily, they noticed the change in me right away because all those pants I got rid of, now I'm wearing longer dresses, my hair is tied up, and so I became a challenge for some of them. You know what I'm saying? Now they want to see if I really am I just wearing the garb, or what's going on. So now the small talk is coming. Well, what's going on? Well, what, you change churches? You go to a different church now? What's, and I just smile at them and keep it moving because I wasn't going to stop and explain at the time because I knew, a couple of times I said, "Oh, I'm part of a new ministries today." And, well, what's that? Well, here's the website, and that was the end of that. So, like you said, Akoti Maria, I would just direct them there and leave it at that because number one, I knew not to engage them about a new because that wasn't my place. Number two, from previous experience with the same people, I saw how they were coming. Now they're just coming differently because I changed my clothes, so they want to change their approach. So it was, and I didn't know, I didn't see any new. It was for the same reason that they was hollering before. You know what I'm saying? And so yeah, I didn't know enough to entertain the thought. I just knew that was just something else that I needed to put blinders on so I can get to where I'm going, which is, and I'm still not there because but I'm on a better path. And at least I have an idea of which way to go. Back then I just started eliminating things, and that was one of the things I started eliminating. So the small talk, because I'm a talker. I wasn't no such thing as small talk for me.
Right.
If it started off, I don't know where it was going to end.
I would say not necessarily challenging, but just seeing, like you share, how fast they disappear. Because when you give that, well, you can go here and check this out, or you can go here and ask this person, you're not coming back saying nothing because it's like that's too much work. Or either like that, trying to have small talk. Well, what are you doing? I need work. I'm doing this. I'm doing this. Like, you always doing that? Yeah, I am. Yeah, I am. And even with business, the I can kind of see how the conversation can try to veer off into that point, but it still goes in the same circle. Well, here's the website. Well, here's this video. Whatever it is, I have something that I can share with you related to what you're talking about, whether it's a video, a podcast, or just a link. Talk to these people because I don't have no answers for you.
Uh, so I wanted to, because the one thing we did, and this is not a big section. I know we've been talking about head coverings and both their significance, the symbolism, physically wearing them, and all of that. We also have adornments, like, and I know we didn't. If I'm missing something, let me know. Because y'all always smiling, and then I know, okay, there's something in the chat. Because my chat is moving slow. But women in ancient times adorned themselves, right? There's an adornment that of with jewelry and necklaces and earrings, and there are different references in here. Round tires like the moon. This is found in Isaiah 3:20, and I'll read it to you. Though what is happening in Isaiah 3:20 is an admonishment in a sense for the putting on of those things, it is a indicator though of what our women wore at that time, right? And not necessarily that these were unrighteous things, but it had to do with the fact that those things became the sum total
Mm,
of how you presented. And so it goes back to the in you, not on you.
yeah.
So I could wear this stuff. And Safta said something at the very beginning of our dialogue and conversation in episode 1 of this. One of the things she said was that they put on the garb because it was to the glory of the Most High, right? So when I begin to put on and adorn myself, but um coquettishly walking. And I had to look that up because it's like, what? Coquettishly walking? What does that mean? It means you're walking
Going
seductive,
off.
short strides. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So the adorning of these things is so that you can, you know, do exactly what she said in the chat. Jezebel kind of gets us to do, engage in sexual immorality. So it pulls you into this world of desire and all of that. But in Isaiah 3:20, I just found it profound that it identifies and outlines a few things. It says, therefore, the Most High will smite. Let me read the. Therefore, Yahweh will smite with a scab the crown of the head of the daughters of Zion, and Yahweh will discover their secret parts. Um, in that day, Yahweh will take away the bravery of their tinkling ornaments, and that's ornaments around their feet. So, feet chains, what do you call those? Anklets, right? Their calls, and calls are like an interweaving of like a netting that kind of covers the hair. So it is a form of head covering. They're round tires like the moon. Though they're referring to things like pendants around the neck and things of that nature, chains and bracelets and mufflers. And I was like, well, what's a muffler? And so um, a muffler is a type of veil that women would wear, and not necessarily a veil based on our understanding of when you wear a veil is when you become a bride, but a veil is a type of covering as well too. It goes on, Isaiah goes on to say, this is 3:20 specifically, which refers to the bonnets, which again is another headdress, and the ornaments of the legs and the headbands. And in this way, they're talking about something that a woman would wear as well too. So these are all different types of adornments, and here we have a few that are connected to the head covering. But this is just to show us, like, Hebrew women wore these things. This is how they adorn themselves. And um I just think of things like nose rings as well too. And I say that because there's some of this we see in lots of different cultures, right? People imitating and taking on so many of these adornments without even understanding their value. I remember growing up in the Caribbean, I used to see babies with a red beaded bracelet, when they were born, they would immediately. I was like, I know they weren't born with it, but somebody put it on. When I got older, I realized somebody put it on. And I realized one went on my hand as well too, not realizing that there is a piece in the Torah that speaks about um, the woman tying a red cord around the baby's hand or wrist for as a form of protection, which goes back to the reference to the scarlet and that red, so. And I always, when I got started looking at Orisha and so on, I was like, oh, that's it, shoe. No, no. Like just seeing how there are different connections between our Hebrew culture and the remnants of that culture taking hold in places like the Caribbean and so on, and not realizing there is a connection with that red bracelet around the baby's arm for protection. And I just think that goes to show how our adornments were we use them, and it went beyond just beautification and for
Mm.
fashion. It had deeper value.
Yeah.
Greetings, guys.
Peace, Oba.
Peace, chief. Yeah.
Peace.
Please, good evening. Good evening. Yeah,
Shabbat.
shalom. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, give thanks for this. There's something that came to mind. First off, the Isaiah piece is actually what I dialed in to speak on, what you just spoke on. So
Mhm.
synchronicity is beautiful. I was going to speak on just something that was spoken about. It's the same event, just spoken about further in the chapter down in chapter 47. But the reason it jumped into my head, because as you were all sharing this evening, I was thinking about this incident that happened that I was gonna do a commentary on, and then I just and I lose interest quickly in wanting to talk about things. So if you don't get me when I'm hot, it's over. You know. So there was an incident with India RE at the latest Essence Festival, and essentially there were some um like females, I guess, who were on the stage, booty clapping and twerking and whatnot at the Essence Fest. And she had spoken on it, and she shared, like, she didn't condemn them, but she did say, like, we have to consider context, and this may not be the contextual environment for that sort of behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's still going on right now. They're calling to cancel her. She's been getting dragged up and down. They said that she's old. She's just mad because she can't do it. She's out of touch. All these different things, and they've been going crazy on her on IG and on Twitter and all these different platforms. So I was like, man, I kind of want to speak on this. This is an important thing, and I was considering, that Isaiah piece, in particular, Isaiah 47, where it speaks about the fall of Babylon. And, the Most High is saying that um, it's speaking about the daughters of it. It says, "O virgin daughter of Babylon, O daughters of Babylon." And then it speaks about take off your veil, strip off your robe, and expose yourself. So when it uses that word, it says you will be naked. You will be naked and burdened with shame. And then it's like, now walk through the river. And that word naked, which is a year in the Hebrew, it doesn't mean naked like, because it's speaking about two different things: strip off your veil and then get naked, right? So there's a clear distinction between not having your head covered, but then there's nakedness, right? So when you look at the translation of that word, it's speaking about more so the exposing of pudenda, if you will. Um, so it's not, so there's a clear distinction of, like, show your thighs and your genitals versus showing your head. And in showing your thighs and your genitals, that's considered to be a shameful act. Like, shameful to the point, like, that's a curse. by the Creator when you were out showing your okay, your beeper going on at the hospital. You got to renew your weekend pass. Come back to the hospital. But either that or your order's ready. So yeah, um, so yeah, like that concept of like being naked in public and having to move through public is actually a curse. So I thought about it with the sister in the RE, and I'm like, yo, 20 years ago, this woman did brown skin, you know, and every song that she's presented to us has been a beautiful representation of love, class, you know, every single song. She doesn't have any raunchy songs in particular, right? Even back when she was a much younger woman, and now she's just a big, dark, voluptuous mother. If she wanted to get on a stage and make a fool out of herself to stay relevant, she could have done that. I mean, Erica Badu does it, Jill Scott does it, but she decided, I'm just going to be this dark, beautiful, voluptuous mother up here singing about love still after all this time. And as a result, she gets completely disrespected, and if you really think about it, and it's just all the things that came to me, she is one of the leaders and brown girl empowerment and brown woman empowerment, like real empowerment, not the fake stuff, the real empowerment. Saying that, yeah, I may not look like what's on TV. It's cool. Yeah, I might got some hair under my arms. It's cool. My legs may be a little, it's cool. I may not have money for a diamond, but I give me a piece of crystal. I'm cool with that. Like that was real empowerment. So it made me consider that scripture. And importantly, when we talk about being covered, a lot of times what's referenced is, First Corinthians, when Paul is saying that to be covered. But there's a key point there, and it's like, really, when we cover, we show our power. And what I mean by that is, like, again, big, dark, voluptuous mother, she can get up there. She got a wagon now after having them babies. She can get up there and do it now. She ain't the skinny little girl singing, about the video with the daisies on her shirt. She's big and voluptuous now. you know but the thing is, you really show your power by showing your deference to the Most High. That's what covering is, because covering is not necessary. Covering is not a commandment. Because when you read in the Corinthians, it says, like, first of all, it says it's a shame for a man to prophesy and pray with his hair, with his head covered, right? And then it says that it's a shame for a woman to prophesy and pray with her hair uncovered. So right there, you see that Paul is not making a distinction between what the men are doing and the women are doing. Like, you both can pray, you both can prophesy, like, you both have that power. But the way you show your humility to what's above you is different. That's the difference between you two. Because, like, in that scripture, he says that the hair of the woman is the glory of the woman. So he's like, look, if you want to pray and prophesy uncovered, just shave your head bald. If you want to do it like that. If not, then this is how we should do. But if not, if you cool with a bald head, wear the bald head. And that was so important. Again, just it's a lot, but I'm trying to condense it. At that time in Corinthians, the Romans were in power, but the Romans were allowing the Corinthians to live as Greeks. That was the key. So the Greek culture was all about sexual immorality, and in particular, not just the sexuality and the rape and all those things like that, but what was most prominent in Greek culture was temple prostitution. And more specifically, temple homosexual prostitution. So males would dress up as women and they would grow their hair as long as women. That's why in that same scripture, that same chapter, he says it's a shame for a man to have his hair long. So he's not saying that like just long hair is the problem. He's saying long hair in reference to the length of the woman. That's why when you go to Hindi culture and you see the brothers with the locks, the woman's locks are always longer. Even in Asian culture, the woman's hair is going to be longer than men. Even in old Victorian culture, the women may have wore their hair in these buns and all these elaborate things. Even in Roman and Greek culture, the men may have had shoulder length hair, but the women's hair would be going down to their behind. So at this time, you had men growing their hair like women, and you know, really being temple prostitutes. So that's what Paul like so all of this like uncovered and presenting yourself a certain way, it 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 has a historical meaning of like you're bending things, you're twisting things, you know, but to show your true humility and to show your true deference is the covering. Because like when you read Proverbs 20:29, the glory of young men is their strength, and the beauty of the old man is the gray head. Right? So it's showing you right there, like, so if I'm a young man and I'm strong, you're gonna see that immediately. When we think about ancient Israelites, they were a war people. They were not soft farmers, or these were warring people. So to say that the glory of the young man is his strength, because we understand the culture that these people are coming out of, but we also understand the strength and the majesty of the women of this culture. So if the woman says, yeah, with all this beauty, with all these beautiful, thick, long locks, because that's what we talking about. You know, when we talking about hair, that's what he talking about. I'm gonna cover it when I'm connecting to the creator. And then we might say, well, then if you're not praying or prophesying, then a woman can have her hair uncovered. But then you read in Ephesians, it say that you should be praying unceasingly. You should always be in prayer. So if I'm always in prayer, then I'm always covered. Right? That's the caveat to it. So you have these powerful women who have established the standard of beauty for the planet, for the entire planet. They have established, to the point that mythologies like Medusa were created around the beauty, in particular their hair, and how it would freeze the Greek man in his tracks. You know, and even from that moment that he would encounter the Medusa, would change his bloodline forever. He'd be no more. He would sex himself out of existence. That was the freezing, turning into stone part, right? But just the idea of like, before you can cover yourself as a woman, you got to first know your glory. Like as the scripture says, the woman's hair is her glory, and the woman is the glory of the man, right? So if I don't know my glory, then I don't know what to cover, right? Like that's the key in all of this. You read Leviticus 19:32. You shall rise up before the elder. No, you shall rise up before the hoary head, and you shall honor the face of the elder and fear the Elohim, because I am Yahuwah. Right? So we understand like the elder is to be glorified. And I'm tying this in thinking about what happened with India Ari, right? Her gray hair is that like that's her honor. Like that's her, she's the elder. She has honor now. And you look at all these different transgressions, like you showing your thighs. You're not supposed to show your thighs. You wearing these outfits that show, I could see your whole vagina imprint. That's an actual curse that signals, not even signals the fall of Babylon. That was a forced march when the Most High was like, yo, take all your stuff off and walk. That was a forced march. And you're doing it for fun. And I think what's also, and I'm gonna I'm gonna give it back to you on this. I just want to share, but I think what's also important in this because you have this experience of the Essence Festival, right? The I played the Essence Festival years ago. It was always historically a jazz festival. It used to be called the Essence Jazz Fest.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody would dress in white, and then then they started throwing some R&B artists in it, but it was always like more obscure R&B artists you haven't seen in a long time. Oh, what happened to this one? What happened to that one? They would be at the Essence Jazz Festival, but then maybe your Regina Bells, your Angela Wimbush, but it would still be artists that would be classy enough that they could be up on stage with your Will Downings or your Rochelle Farrells or other maybe like more classical jazz artists.
Mm-hmm.
The Essence Jazz Festival got bought out. It's no longer owned by Essence. It got bought out about a year or so ago.
So they just maintain the name.
Right. They kept the name. So it's still supposed to be this symbol of like class for
Yes.
Nubian people, but they're having like when you got people twerking on the stage, they didn't rush the stage. They was twerking on it like this is what it is. So you had all of these people still coming expecting this classy, sophisticated experience, and it was this. You see, you talk about that's what I'm saying. It's so significant when you're looking at like the fall of Babylon and the trickery, because this festival has been going on for over 30 years. The
Yeah.
Essence Jazz Fest. I played the Jazz Fest probably early 2000s. I played with Will Downing. Very classy event, very cool, very laid back, you know, and it's this now, but it's still maintaining. You think Essence Jazz Fest, and I did the Jazz Fest more than once because they used to also have hair shows. I did the Jazz Fest as a barber as well, So it was always this event you would come to. There'd be hairstylists, there'd be people talking about how to get a mortgage, how to clean up your credit, stuff like that. And then it'd be this music and food. It was a classy kind of experience, you see. So it just made me think about with the covering, you got to know what to cover
Mm-hmm.
so that you know what to defend. Because when we speak about even the physical covering in scripture, nothing is specified, right? So if Naya began to prophesy and pray right now, which is really the word prayer is translate really supplication. So if she began to do that right now in this moment, she could literally just take a pencil and put it on the top of her head. She's covered. You see, if her hair was out. So the idea is not I'm covering so perfectly you can't see this, you can't see that. The idea is that I'm showing whether I put a piece of wood on the top of my head, whether I put a book on my head, whether I put a piece of pretty cloth, I'm showing that yes, I have all this power, but I'm humbling myself. And we are the humble, we're the meek people. So we show that through our covering. As soon as I come in the room, like, yeah, I'm beautiful, but it ain't about all that. Don't even worry about all that. You see, that's the power of the covering. I know I went all over the place and stuff. That was the replacement for the NDRE commentary I was gonna do. So I just figured I'd hijack. I don't have to do a whole video. I really don't like doing those videos. Yeah.
Oh, good thing. You,
That was wonderful. Oh, were you speaking to Koti? I didn't hear you.
I was just gonna say, like with Chief revealed that it's if they were bought out, and then he said, like, know who's covering you, and so it's like when people are going to this event, it's like, do you even know who it's covered by, like who it's owned by, and then what are you actually buying into when you participate?
Yeah,
Yeah, that
and
was.
I really.
I'm sorry. I was just saying I'd have been so mad because still trying to understand. Was it performing people that were actually on stage twerking doing that, or was it just like I don't know, dan- some dancers of the performers like? I don't know.
Let him. I
I
don't
don't
even
find the story.
know if it matters. I don't even know if it matters. It's just like,
Yeah, just the fact that you're doing it, like that's
yeah.
not what I came for.
Mm. Well, did they did?
Yeah, I think it's significant to consider that it is an agenda, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things she says, like, they didn't bomb the stage, they didn't rush the stage. So someone put you on the schedule
Yes, for
purposely,
agenda.
And
So
that's to take away, right? It's to take away from what had already been established. I had attended the Essence Festival a few years in a row, and it was always, and it's been years, but it was always very laid back. Well, Downing was one of my favorites, but it was always very low. I mean, a lot of older people were there. And someone said that too in the radio. Yeah, there were a lot of elders who attended. I mean, that was just it was and again, anytime it's that agenda is to pervert the culture that was meant to be for a certain people, and it's to keep them into that, keep them away from it, because as long as they twerking, they're not gonna figure out what they supposed to be figuring out. And I really did appreciate when Chief broke down about covering the thighs, and how that was a curse, and it what he was talking, it made me think about even Noah. Well, I believe Noah was the one that got drunk, and his son looked on his naked body, and the other two sons kind of backed in there and covered him up, you
Mm-hmm.
know because they weren't supposed to look on his body. But it just keeps going back, um, to it just keeps going back to that protection, that covering, and how the agenda is to rip that away, and to for us to become naked, because who started who started promoting the naked wear first, if you think about it. Who was the first hoochie mamas out there? I remember the woman I saw that was the most naked. I remember, I think it was Cher back in the day, but she was covered. She used to just wear these really body suits, and then I think she went to the little things that the women at the horrors in Vegas wear, those little, whatever you call those little tutu things they dance in. But I remember, because I used to think when I forget that group Beyonce came out in, and her mom was designing their clothes, they were always half naked. I forget what they were called when they were a group, but they were always half naked. But when you think back on like the Jones Girls and Escape, and they didn't dress like that. When they first came out, that wasn't part of their performance, was to be naked. But yeah, it just made me think and if they're taking off all their clothes, oh my lord, what would it take to get them to cover up their hair? you know And let me not say that, because I can imagine somebody being totally naked with a head wrap on. So let me just back off from that.
You know what? I wasn't going to come back in, but to speak on that, I think you made a very important point. Like, who began some of these things, at least as far as in recent years where we may have been exposed to it. And I remember as a youth, Charo. And you
Ah, yes.
remember Charo? Yeah, Uchi Uchi Coochie la la la,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Charo show. And even I think prior to Charo, again, you look at the cultural context, right? The cultural context says this. In 1975, Brooke Shields, she was 10. She was 10 years old, and she posed nude in a bathtub for Playboy magazine.
A 10-year-old?
Brooke Shields, Brooke Shields is a popular model and
Yeah.
actress back in the day. She did a movie called The Blue Lagoon, which was really teenage soft porn almost, um, where she was shipwrecked on an island with another youth, and they ended up having sex, having a baby, and everything. It almost had like a flowers in the attic sort of vibe. But yeah, she was 10 years old when she posed for Playboy, and she was nude inside of a bathtub. I think the cover was called Sugar and Spice or something like that. Sugar and Spice and everything not so nice, something like that, right? But ultimately, the point I'm making is that um this is the culture that birthed. So we may look at, well, because we could say, well, who began? Maybe it was Josephine Baker. Maybe it was this one. It's this culture that promotes and forwards that sort of idea that even back in 1975 you would have this level of child abuse, that sold ridiculously. Hugh Hefner sold ridiculously off the rack, for that. Yeah, it was Bo Derek, but Bo Derek, Abahu, she was grown. When she did 10 and all that, she was already a grown woman. She did 10 with Dudley Moore and stuff like that. Brooke Shields was a baby. you know. She
And
she was she was a baby. She was 10.
they always, I mean, I knew she was a model, and I didn't know she was an actress. But I think I recently saw like a quick article about how like she grew up being like sexualized, and I'm like, well, I guess so. If you doing porn at 10, like your parents put you out there, they sold you.
Yeah. So I mean, this is where these ideas begin. So certain things, the lane has already been opened up for the acceptability of certain things, right? So when you say, well, look, as original women, we have the best bodies, we have the best skin tone, we have the best this, the best shapes, and so forth. But we're going to humble ourselves and show deference to our creator. Again, that's where the power is not in this movement where show everything, get on the stage and twerk up and down, booty clap, or show your cleavage, or whatever stupid thing you may come up with. That's always going to be beaten out by class. And of course you have certain artists who are older now who have even given into that. Like, well, I haven't been able to beat them, so I'm gonna join them. I might as well just, because I can't sell any more music, or they're not putting me in any more movies anymore. So I'm gonna have to come out here like Tracy Ellis Ross, and or Gabrielle Union the other day came out in a see-through dress. You know, I'm just gonna have to come out here and be naked because I can't seem to get anybody to look at me. You
Mm.
know, I need someone to look at me because this demonic light is what I've been feeding off of for the past 15, 20 years. And the light is starting to dim and I'm hungry, you know.
Yeah. Or I
You
set
would
it off.
say soul, as they would say, for that light. You'll expose your thighs and everything just because you want to be in the limelight.
Hmm. Or I see it dimming, so I'll put the younger version of me out there to keep it going.
Yeah, but it never works. If you look at scripture, Yahweh Shai, at one point his hair was washed by Mary's hair. I mean his feet were washed, excuse me, by Mary's hair. And you remember the apostles around him, like their biggest problem with that was not that she did that. It was that, why you use this expensive perfume? That money that you spent on that perfume to clean his feet, you could have put that in the bucket, right? So that tells you something right there. Like this woman was willing to take off her covering and bow in front of who she considered to be her master, right? So ultimately who you get nude to is who you're subconsciously acknowledging, this is who owns me. Because why didn't Yahweh Shai flip out? Hey girl, put your what you doing? Can't do that up in here, girl. You know, put your hat back on.
Hey, you
Right.
know, what you
And
doing?
we don't know what she had on her head. You know what I mean? It
You
could
said
have been
this
a hat.
time.
Could have been a Kango. But the thing is but or why didn't he go crazy and start gyrating and see, ooh, hair, you know? Yeah, I think it's a different time. Women, look, you laughing. Women used to go crazy when Marvin Gaye would take his bow tie off and unbutton that top button when he sung "Distant Lover." They go crazy. You know, you didn't have to do that much back then, just a little
Ooh.
bit. Forget when Teddy Pendergrass come out through all them tight, kinked up chains around his hairy neck. You know, he start untangling them chains and women go crazy. You know, that was back then. You know, Teddy Pat, he was tall dude. He's like 6'2". You know, big chocolate sex symbol. So you didn't have to do much back then. But that's what I'm saying. Why didn't Yahushai go crazy? Because it was like, you're not nude in front of me, and what you're doing is appropriate. You know, because you are exposing your glory to the right one.
Hmm.
You know, I think that's just a significant kind of thing, because I think we've seen a lot of women today um exposing their glory for the wrong reasons to the wrong people. You know.
I think about that part, um, that is even a reflection of the consequences. When you say in Isaiah 47, it speaks of this. In Isaiah 3:24, it says, "And it will come to pass that instead of sweet smell, there shall be stink, and instead of a girdle, a rent." And I think a rent is kind of like torn. Uh, no, a rope. And I wonder if a rope has to do with like what you call it, like being almost like tied to something.
It has to do with you losing your inheritance. That's what it's speaking about.
Mm.
And he brings up inheritance in that chapter, because you remember he's saying, daughters, oh my virgin daughters, oh daughters of Babylon, like, you will not sit on a throne, you're going to sit on the ground. So
Yeah.
so what he's saying is, you being stripped of your regality, you're being stripped of your inheritance, you're stripped of your throne, you know. And when he's like, now take your veil off. So yeah, that thing that protected you from the rest of the world, take it off, you know, and show your thighs. When he says, now reveal your nakedness, show your thighs. Like, all of these things that separated his people. Yeah, we are a royal people. We're a beautiful people. Look at how we adorn ourselves. You know, we have the royal robes on, this, that. And he's saying, man, you know, you playing with it. And you playing with it for so long. I'm gonna let you see what you really are without my covering. And then he sends them on a march. That's when he says, now walk through the rivers. You see, you walking through the rivers exposed. So losing that robe is speaking about losing that inheritance. You know, you've lost all your costly arrays, as you would say, you know, because you've lost sight of where your actual glory is,
Right.
you know.
Right. That ground, that sitting on the ground is like mourning. I know that's an ancient representation of when you're like in grief, right? And you begin to like tear your clothes off and you sit on the ground and you're desolate in those moments, and that's what we see. That's exactly what we see.
Right. Because the covering itself is, the covering is me letting you know your place. When you wear the covering, it's, you know, when it talks about women should have their heads covered and praying and prophesying, it's like, you know, your glory, but there's an order of things. That's why he's like, you know, look, man, man didn't come from woman, woman came from man. Like, we have an order in doing things. But if you want to violate that order, I'm gonna strip you of your place. You know, it's like I spoke about in a recent podcast. The clothing that the capable woman makes shows her rank, the clothing that she wears. You see, your covering shows your rank. Oh, they're one of the chosen. Oh, okay. All right. Well, we got to deal with them a little bit different. We speak to them a little, like, you know, like your sisters were saying, we greet them a little bit differently, because, you know, I noticed something many years ago when I had my locks, many years ago. for the most part. And I have to use a percentage. I'd say maybe 95%. 95% of the men I used to notice, like myself, who had locks at that time, walked very upright. It's all that noise, man. But they walked very upright. You would you would be hard pressed to see a brother who has locks who would be hunched over and sullen. There's a certain gait and a certain stride that men with locks have, you know. So and the same thing with sisters with locks, but I noticed it mostly with men. The spine would always be very straight, you know. So it there's a once you're wearing a certain thing in a certain way, and you're showing that I have this outshowing act of humility, whether it's a piece of cloth or whether it's whatever. I am showing that I'm now in my place. So when he's like, man, take all that off,
Right.
you lost your place, and now you got to walk. You're gonna walk to come back to your place again, because he's like, I'll return you to me, but now you're going to move like a peasant. You took this for granted. You took this for granted. Now you're going to move like a peasant. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just that idea of the Proverbs 31:22, where she makes her coverings and it talks about the being clothed in fine linen and purple, and when you speak about the value of the linen and the purple and the scarlet. But I also think about just the idea of weave. It's a ritual, not wanting to bring it to this ritual space, but it's a ritual when you do weave and create, right? And you're putting together it clothing. It's almost like you're putting together armor, right? You're putting together something that you know will give protection to your home and your family and even self, and you speak on that in that Proverbs 31 episode. So yeah, I think about how valuable it is just knowing your value, knowing your worth, and being able to say, no, I cover, and it's not because I'm forced to do it, or, I just have to do this thing here because, but then you do it in one space, and then when you're in another space, you don't. Um,
Yeah. Within that, then I don't know. I don't know how to deal with you. I don't know how to treat you. Like I said, you take a look at that Leviticus 19:32. Again, stand up before the gray head one and honor the face of the elder, right? So if you're not presenting yourself, and you're like, there's certain things we should show. Young men should show their strength. They should do things that show their strength. That's the glory. Old men or old women should show their gray hair, because if I don't see your gray hair, how do I know to honor you? How do I know to bow before you? So the things that would give us splendor and honor, we hide. Young men nowadays are effeminate, and that is something that was spoken against with great disgust. That's a sin, and that word translated to softness. So it wasn't just, and that was when, because that was Paul saying, like, some of you are idolaters, some of you are adulterers, this, that. He's going through it, and then he's like, some of you are effeminate. But he's saying, in that term effeminate, he's saying you're acting like women, right? So all of these different things that the man would have or the woman would have, that they're supposed to show outward so we can praise and clap, those are the things that society is telling you to hide your gray hair, right? Hide your humility. When you go out in the streets, you got to be cocky and tough, but when you get inside, you can be a little soft, you can bend a little bit. You see, everything's the opposite. So you don't actually get the praise and the recognition that you're supposed to get as a result.
when you mentioned that, I thought about when we were I think this was the first episode we spoke about the biblical reference that a woman should not wear anything that pertains to a man. I think that is Deuteronomy 22:5. And w- just in like doing the research and really looking at what that meant in terms of the difference, yes, the robes and how they look, but also um, what pertained to a man was we went over this though, but I just think about that and how significant it is. What pertained to a man was what represented that strength, which was warriorhood. So they would wear weaponry that represented that warriorhood, and that was distinct. That is what partly what distinguished what a man wore in terms of what pertained to a woman versus what pertained to a man. And I think about how, these days women wear on their sleeve anything that, denotes masculinity in the need or desire with in the need to be equivalent to a man, which is wrong, actually, based on, just like that biblical scripture. So when you talk about strength, it made me think of that warriorhood and how how men presented themselves and how women were to present themselves as well. And that softness is present because of the absence of those tools for protection, so to speak, or fighting and warriorhood and warriorship. So that, those, I just think about, just all the different precepts and how they support or build one on top the other.
Like they say, when in Rome, do as the Romans.
Mm.
And that's that's the crux of the issue. We're assimilating in a way that's causing us to no longer be recognizable, and we can't even praise and appreciate each other anymore because we're acting like Romans, who, I mean, according to scripture at the time, was acting like Greeks, which was even worse. So that's why, like, when Paul was saying that, when he was saying, because when he said, be not, he said, nor thieves, nor covetous, nor drunkards, nor fornicators, nor adulterers, nor effeminate, uh, nor abusers of themselves with mankind. What he was talking about, abusers of themselves with mankind, he was talking about bottoms. Y'all don't know. Good. You're really not supposed to know. He's talking about the dissexual male who receives.
Oh.
Okay.
I was thinking like pants.
No, not exactly. They coming off.
Got that song in your head.
Right. But that's what he was referring to, because all of these things, they're female attributes, but they remove the man from you and they make you soft. You see, they make you soft. So that's we glorify you because of the strength we've put in you. You original people. You original men, you're big and you got these big muscles and you take forever to age. And even as old man, you're still strong, carrying big bags of feed and working on farms and stuff into your 80s. You're just these big, strong people. And you're over here allowing this sort of behavior. I'm not going to say nothing, you know. Now, if it was the brothers on, yeah, I'd have a good time with it. I won't do that to y'all. So yeah, it's all about us becoming unrecognizable, and that's why, even again, the admonitions against long hair were also put out there, because he's saying, like, look, the Greeks do this. They over here masquerading themselves as females, because of their worship of Aphrodite. We don't do that. That's not our thing. We grow beards, as men. Our men grow beards and our women let their hair grow. You see. So
Yeah. And that, it made me think of, it's like, then there's the
Fabian.
what?
Oh, I thought you was gonna say Fabian. Made you think of
No,
Fabian.
no, I was gonna say
You
like
know who he is.
no, I don't.
Is that like that guy that does the hair commercials?
He
That
used to
does
do the hair commercials, but he used to be on those romance novels. He was like
Oh,
the
Yeah,
model.
white
Fabio!
dude in the books. Right.
Right.
The white
Fabian.
dude with the long flowy
uh,
hair on them.
Hmm.
Fabio, whatever his name is.
Fabian.
I was, it made me think because when you were talking about these big strong men, it's like, well, now there's, you know, it's toxic masculinity, but deep down, like there's still a want for that. But then what's said out loud is that it's toxic, which is also insane.
but it's wrong because toxic masculinity is the soft man.
I understand, but what I'm saying is that, but that's the reverse. Like that is what like Babylon does. It's the reverse. Like what they say is toxic masculinity is the man being the big strong man.
Well, I mean, you gotta at some point you don't try to process the insanity because that's how it gets in, right? So I'm thinking about Safta Hava, your story of being in the store and seeing a guy who was in there with the see-through shirt on, licking his own nipples, right? So, and that's what I pictured in my head.
Who
Okay,
added that?
Meat.
all right.
He
So you
added
picture
on.
you picture what you picture. I picture what I picture. Okay, so in an instance like that, yes, you try to look away and so forth, but you leave. I don't know if you just touched this avocado I'm about to bring home and feed to my grandchildren. You see, I give you a quick thing with that. Years ago, I was in some African country, man. I was either in Uganda or Rwanda. It was one of the Angdas. Might have been Wakanda. It could have been Wakanda. Well, I remember, but
Yeah.
Continue,
I,
Wakanda.
it was one of the Andas.
I'm like, there's a lot
Matter
of
of
us.
fact, no, I know it was. It was Rwanda. It couldn't have been Uganda. I just remember why.
No, Wakanda.
Nah, it was. It could have been Wakanda, but it definitely wasn't Uganda. And I wanted to get some. I was turning in for the night, and I was heading to my spot, and I wanted to get some fruit. It was, of course, it's always hot at night, so I was like, oh man, I want some. I had a taste for some pineapple and some papaya. So there was it was a guy selling. I was like, oh, let me go over to buy some real quick before I go in. And when I got up to him, he was extremely effeminate. That's how I know it wasn't Uganda. So because they don't
Right.
play that. Yeah.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah. That's why I just remembered.
It's
No, it
fruit.
wasn't Uganda. So he was really, really effeminate. Like, I mean, hunched over back, just real wayfish looking. And I'm like, can he even cut through the pineapple? You know, like, and I didn't want to offend him by walking away because I'm looking at him, I'm like, man, he must have it rough out here. Like I don't know if he did or didn't, but my heart went out. I was like, man, I don't want to. He was kind of like he saw me, he smiled. I'm like, oh, what was he smiling at me for? I'm like, here we go. you
Oh,
know, and it was like a sweet smile, like hi, like I was like, oh god. So I was like, yeah, man, let me get some pineapple, man. You know, and he cut it up and I put it right out into the grass. Like I walked away and I was like, I'll take this because I didn't want to be offensive to him. He didn't say or do anything offensive to me or anything like that. But I was like, there's no way I, I'm putting this in my body. There's no way at all I'm putting this in my body. You know, um, so that's an example of like I'm not sitting there. I didn't stop and say, hey man, tell me your story. Did your uncle touch you? Did your cousin touch? Man, listen. I'm not trying to make. You're insane. All of these fine Rwandan women out here in this beautiful country, and man, yeah, you have to be mentally ill to be acting like that. You know, So sometimes you have to, I think especially more so as a woman too, instead of trying to make sense of the insanity, you have to just move from it. That's what sanctification is about. You know, maybe I'm in the wrong store, or maybe I'm in the store at the wrong time. Another quick example, I'll mute out after this. During the pandemic, I don't know if you remember that Walmart at one point, I don't know if they still have it, but they had the early dawning shopping for senior citizens,
Yes. Yeah.
right? You remember, like, I think it was like 7 a.m. or something like that. Yeah, I think
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure it was 7. So I used to go to that, right? Um, because I got my mask on. Don't tell me I'm not a senior. You don't know, you know. And I would go in and I would just walk real slow.
Oh my goodness.
This is messed up. But I would, like, I would put a little stank on it. You know what I mean? Like, try to play it up a little bit.
You
You
rode
know,
in the cart. You rode in the
yeah,
cart.
I would get it because I never carry a card. I don't like carrying cards because it feels girly. So I used to just, man, if I can't carry it in my arms, I ain't getting it. But I would get the card, you know,
So
and I would just be
walking with
walking real slow. Yeah, yeah. And I would just nod to people as it wouldn't say nothing, but just, and I wasn't wearing mask, you know, but I was like, that's when I would put the mask on, right? But the whole thing, yeah, silver sneakers, the whole thing was after this time period, it's super erratic in here. There's a lot of panicked energy coming in, not only from the people who are coming from to shop, but also the staff.
Mhm.
You got all the human lanes closed, everybody's doing self checkout and the water, the toilet paper, just all that craziness. When I go in the dawning, there's like hardly anybody in here, and I can actually move around faster than anybody else in here. Unbeknownst to them, I got a secret superpower. I'm like a hero. I'm like a superhero up in here. you know, and I would be able to get in, do what I got to do with these nice empty aisles, and not have to commingle with a lot of energy because you buying your water after people been racing through the aisles and screaming, "Where's the water? Where's the water?" And going all insane and programming your food and your water with that kind of energy.
Mhm.
So sometimes you have to figure out ways to sanctify. Like, okay, we not coming to this store at this time. Friday night is not. We ain't going to Walmart on Friday. We're going to Tuesday at as soon as they open. So we'll be the first one to open the door. In and out. You figure out different ways to sort of create that barrier because you remember your covering. It's not just a cloth. Your covering is an idea.
Mhm.
Whether you cover yourself with a leaf, a fig leaf is what they use at one point for their coverings, but it still showed their humility, So just wanted to add that.
Leaf.
Yeah, fig leaf.
Mhm.
I mean, when they fell, obviously some things changed. I couldn't use no fig leaf, you know. Maybe a fig apron, maybe a fig tube. Yeah, because those was the original people. So you know what I mean? That was the best of the best.
Moving on nicely. Um, but this was a great build, and thank you, Chief, for bringing that perspective to the conversation, to the dialogue. Like, we're talking about coverings, we're talking about adornment and presenting ourselves in one way. And but I do think that perspective of Babylon is fallen. This is what to look for. It's happening. And look, just looking at how some of even the biblical references we pulled on are actually showing how Babylon is falling and what we should be doing, you know. So,
And that's why it's such a beautiful thing to be set apart, you know. And everything you do, not just the way we dress, but the way we think, the way we move, and all the things that connect it to what Chief has been sharing. It all covers, it all comes back to the same thing. And in the new way, I believe that's why presentation is so, when I read that, I was like, oh, it's got right down to the letter about how we move in public. And, even to the fact that as women, we don't yell across the room or, and as we talked about, having small talk with men outside of our community and just that level of protection. It was really funny. Some things had happened to me over the strong work, and someone had reached out on Facebook, and it was my first time to really be able to use, and I won't say use my covering, but to lean and to duck under my covering and say, oh, you can't reach out unless you go through my covering. You know what I'm saying? And it felt, I can honestly say at my age, I felt more protected now than I have ever felt, just being out there, you know, um, when we think we know what we're doing and how we move it, not even understanding the dangers that we're actually inviting into our cipher, our circle, you know. So yeah, this was awesome. Um, I really can appreciate how important and sacred it is to be covered. And you got to start somewhere for those of you who, may not be a part of a community. You do have to start somewhere. Did I miss something? Oh, because I was having technical difficulties a moment ago, and I was like, oh, but it went away. But yeah, I really enjoyed this bill, and
Safta, can I ask you something about that real quick?
yes,
I
yes,
know
sir.
we've been on for a long time, but that's all right because it's Saturday night. Y'all ain't got nowhere to go.
That's right. That's right.
Hmm. Yeah. Because y'all keep me up all night asking me questions. You know what I mean? Shoot. So you referred a man to your covering, right?
I did.
So at what point did you? At what point do you think that should happen?
As
When?
soon
Hmm.
as soon as he let me know, hey, I like to get to know you and be friends. Oh well, this is the way you can do that, and I referred him to my covering.
Okay. So what if he approached you and he said, "Hey, I would like to be friends," and friends doesn't necessarily imply lovers. Can you be friends with another man and just keep it there?
Absolutely not.
Why not?
Absolutely not. First of all, I'm a woman. He's a man, and I've known of those so-called friendship with benefits and all that, and how it may start off innocent, but yeah, that for me that would be out of line because number one, we don't date. Number two, why he want to be my friend? I got sisterhood. You know
Cause
what
you
I'm saying?
funny. Cause you funny and you know how to can peaches and stuff. Got a lot of skills. She know how to preserve fruit, y'all.
Well, you can go through my covering and you can get them at the a new market.
For $3.99.
But
Okay, so wanting to be your friend and things like that, and obviously things slipping into another place. So my other question is what exactly is your covering in that instance?
um, when I brought it to Aki Isaiah's attention, he said, "Yeah, if he want to send me an invite and come through me," he said, "because number one, a man knows a man. He can get to know what his intentions are, what the reasons why, what why he want to be my friend. What
What
is
exactly is Aki Isaiah protecting?
he's protecting me. He's protecting, keeping me from being He's protecting me from anything or anybody who does not mean me well, according to our standards within a new. If he's not coming to be a part of the community, what is his intention? So he's protecting me from being exposed, I would say, to someone who does not have, who's not connected with the Most High Yah,
Mm-hmm.
and who
Mm-hmm.
is not connected to a community, which is our community, anew.
Mm-hmm. So, are there times that maybe your covering may see something with you or about you that needs to be protected, that you don't know needs to be protected because you didn't notice it?
Absolutely.
Mm,
Absolutely. Always.
okay.
Always.
Okay. All right. This isn't a trick build up or anything, but I just thought it was interesting. It's a good like teaching moment because we have to know each other to cover each other.
That's right.
And you cover yourself too, right? You cover yourself. So in covering yourself, you have to know yourself. There has to be a level of self mastery to cover yourself because you may not know, like sometimes you can tell sometimes sisters who wear clothing a lot of times that they have no business wearing, not just because it's salacious and inappropriate, but sometimes they just ain't got the figure for it. you know some women just look much more beautiful in a skirt or a dress. They may have a nice shape to some degree, but maybe they got a boxy butt, or they got them type of butts that always got wedgies no matter what kind of pants they wear. And it's like, you know what, you shouldn't be wearing no pants. Like, if you wore a skirt, your butt would look better. So it ain't even about the religion at this point. At this point, I'm trying to save your image. Sometimes it's about that. But sometimes we have things about us that we're just unaware of, or like there's vulnerabilities that we don't know about. I remember many years ago, a close sister, I'm supposed to call her back. Goodness. A close sister of mine, um, she this is a long time ago, man. She said, when I worked in the IT field, everybody I knew had a computer, okay? Because I was over a lot of big budgets, and you know, stuff like, hey, you ain't gonna miss this. This last year's model, you know. So I had this vision. It was like, I'm gonna like. I mean, it's the same thing I did when I went to West Africa. Like, I'm gonna supply technology for the hood. Everybody and their mama gonna have a computer, you know. And I remember a sister telling me, she was like, you do too much for people. And I'm like, you can't do too much. What are you talking about? That's crazy talk. you know. And then I remember sometime later, because I mean I had, it was a lot of computers, like, I mean, probably at least over 100 computers I gave out, you know, and not to mention the ones I built for people, right? Um and I became like the hood's tech support, and I didn't want to be the hood's tech support. So I had cats coming banging on my door like, "Yo, this thing ain't working. Yo, can you come by the house? Yo, my kid was playing this da 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 this game, and yo, it ain't turning on." Like, no, I'm not. I'm living my life. This is not what I do. I hooked you up, and then I started realizing, oh man, people are ungrateful. She was right. Like, I done jammed myself up, and what happened was, because every strong in, I counted, it was for like 5-6 months. Every single strong in, I was at somebody's house fixing their computer or teaching them how to use it. And I would leave out the house angry because I would lose my whole strong in over here helping other people. But I put my own self in that situation because I had a vulnerability that I didn't see as a vulnerability. I thought it was a strength. But my sister, who was covering me as a sister, I had known her for a very long time, and she knew more about me than my consorts did, even, you know and when she said that, that was her covering me, and I didn't realize that that was a vulnerability that I had, and a part of me, she still tells me to this day, that a part of me that had to be covered. But then when I noticed my frustration, which was very interesting, um one day I was heading out. My mother was coming up my driveway as I was leaving, and I was pulling out, and I was like, "Yeah, I got to go drive over here and help da 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 with his computer." And she was like, "Well, what's wrong, son?" I was like, "I'm just, I don't know." She's like, "People," I was like, "People just keep calling my phone." She's like, "Yeah, I was calling, you didn't pick up, so I just figured I'd just come over." I was like, "Yeah, I haven't been picking up the phone because they won't leave me alone." And she said, "Well, that's always been your problem." I told you that when you were a little boy, you were always out there fighting for somebody, getting into a fight, getting kicked out of class because you hit this boy because he was making fun of that boy. You was always getting in trouble for somebody else's mess. And I told you back then it was a problem. And my memory just like, you saw the flashes. I was like, oh my God. I remember being 8, 9 years old, and she's sitting me down in the living room, like telling me you can't get involved in everybody's mess, son. They will pull you into their mess. So that was a vulnerability that my first female cover, protected me from. And then I went out into the world and didn't cleave, because the scriptures say when a man leaves his home, the man leaves and cleaves to the woman, right? But I left and I didn't cleave. I left and I was bachelor, being King Dingaling. So that vulnerability opened back up, and I didn't know it was there, and then it caused problems. So I'm just using those as an example because I think we all have, and I wanted to give a masculine example just to share that for the men listening, that it does actually work both ways. It's just we cover differently. When you have a real woman, a garbage woman, she ain't thinking about you. You're on your own. But a good woman will cover you. Same thing with a garbage man. A garbage man, he ain't about to cover nothing. He's not. He hasn't mastered you to even know your full circumference yet, if he ever will. So he doesn't even know what the vulnerabilities are. You know. But thank you, Safta, for sharing that.
Thank you for sharing and just, giving us that, full circle too. Akoti Yafe, you wanted to jump in? I saw you. No? Okay. So we're getting ready to close. I
Yeah,
really
because Naya gonna fall out. She keeps swallowing and try to keep herself awake.
and she's on the left too. Like she is literally. I keep saying, no, no, hold, do this, don't do this.
Hmm. She can't take it. Her head wrap sliding back. It's been going further and further back this whole time. It's like, ain't it time to take me off? It's way past time. I'll be off by now.
Oh goodness! But
I'm hanging in there. I'm hanging in there. Barely.
barely. Well, this is for you. We're gonna close. We really appreciate everyone being here. Are there any last words or anything else that you want to say? If there isn't, the only thing I'd say is look out for the series. We have additional videos from the members of our new sharing insights about the retreats, their favorite times, but also insights about our culture. And we do have one coming up that will cover head coverings as well too, which will be done by Akoti Yafe. So look out for that one and add it to your playlist. Um, add it to your playlist, sisters. And with that, we're gonna close. If you're interested in, our new retreat that's coming up very soon. August 24th to 28th. We have wonderful, wonderful experiences um, lined up and ready for you all. Please go to the Anu Life Global Ministries website. There is an entire page. You could check out some of the older retreats and just, register and come join us. Chief is also reminding me there is the audio version of the Anu Way also available on the Anu Life Global Ministries. And if we use terms that you hear and you're not sure what those terms mean, you could check out the Anu glossary, right? All of the things that you need to know, all of the words, Yes, all of the no, it's not slang and slogans, but all of the righteous and upful and wonderful words that we use down to strong and things like that. There we have a glossary that breaks down all of these words, and we give you links as well too, to lectures that help to, flesh out the idea. So feel free to check out all of our content on Anulek Global Ministries. Chief Bonix, apparently. Somebody said it's Chief Bonix. So peace, everyone. Enjoy your Sabbath.
Shabbat shalom.
Give thanks. Shabbat shalom.
Shalom. Enjoy your rest. Peace.